This is the internet's worst gaming podcast, the best and worst of 2023. I'm your host, Loki S. Jarson, and with me here again is Joe. I don't remember if you have a middle name, Stizzy.
Not that name, at least. Just Joe Stizzy.
M. Stizzy. Joe M. Stizzy.
That's right, yeah.
The M stands for money.
I can never get enough.
It's our big end of the year show that we're recording in the beginning of January. So if we ever say last year or this year, they both mean 2023.
Yeah, that was my fault. We were going to try and record last week, but I was still getting over some sinus issues, and I'm actually still dealing with it, but I'm a lot better this week, so wanted to give it a go just to get it out of the way there.
Get this stupid year out of the way, because there was a lot of games that were just okay.
It wasn't one for the history books, for sure.
And a lot of that was, delays. We're in our third year of delays now, and I'm kind of tired of devs using delays as excuses.
Yeah, I think we'd be past the using COVID as an excuse, but some people are still going to that. Developers, that is.
So let's start, and the best place to start, at the fucking bottom. I'm just going to do a quick run through of what I think are the lowest tier games of the year, shall we say. These are not necessarily in order except for the final one. Forza Motorsport. Considering how fun the Forza Horizon series is, I was hoping for a lot more from Motorsport. It's missing a ton of content. It has forced practice sessions that I fucking hate, that I got roasted on Twitter for. But fuck them. What else? It's just not as fun as it could have been or should have been. It's, again, missing a ton of content, and it's 150 friggin' gigs. Unforgivable.
That's a fat game, even by today's standards.
Redfall. To be fair, I only played this at launch, and they have apparently fixed a lot of the problems, but it's still kind of sucky. And it seems like a game they just kind of threw out there because they're like, shit, we made this, we gotta publish it, you know?
Yeah, that one was kind of... I didn't play it because I didn't get an Xbox till later in the year, but that was kind of a disappointment because that was that Arcane that developed that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember which studio. Like, it wasn't the Dishonored studio, and it wasn't the... It might have been the Prey studio, I can't remember. Because they have like 5.
Yeah, even that would be kind of disappointing because I really liked Prey, but everything I've heard about Redfall has been not so good.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. It's not so good game. Again, I haven't played since they made updates. Maybe they fixed it. Maybe it's good now, but not good enough for 2023.
I'd say for the most part, it's best to, if you're going to give a score to a game, give it to what it's like on day one. You can go back to a game and after there's been patches released.
Most improved game or whatever, sure.
Yeah. There's definitely room for improvement, and it's a good, it's better that we're, kind of in this age where developers can get these patches out quickly and improve their product, but I would like them to be a little bit more finished at launch.
Lego 2K Drive, another racer. This isn't as good as your average Lego game, and it's not as good as your average racer. It's missing content for both. It's unbearably dull. I think even children would find it boring.
Oh, that's not good. That sounds like that's their target audience.
Typically, yes. Even though I've played a lot of the Lego games, they've got their own, charm or whatever, based on property. And it's like, oh, we're doing a racing game. Oh, like the Lego Racers for the N64. That was great back then. Is this like that at all? Not even a tiny bit. It's got a crap ton of DLC stuff. They wanted to pay for extra because it is 2K. That 2K comes from the publisher.
Yeah, pretty soon all games they make will require $2,000 for the complete edition.
I have 2 games here at a tie. I'm kind of cheating, but when I say them, you'll know why. Atomic Heart and Wanted Dead. We both played a little bit of these games. Neither of us completed either of them because they're really fucking difficult to play. It is so weird. I've said this before about other games, but sometimes a game will get in its own way. And both of these games got in their own damn way and prevented you from enjoying them with irritating mechanics.
Yeah, Wanted Dead it kind of wanted to have a hybrid combat system where they wanted you to both play as a cover shooter and as melee. But most of the time when I tried to go in for melee kills, I just ended up getting killed myself. So I pretty much just played it like a shooter, and it's not as refined or polished as other shooters. It felt very dated in just a lot of ways.
And you read some of the behind the scenes stuff from Soleil Entertainment, I think they're called, where they're like, "Oh yeah, we wanted to make a game like that." It's like, why though? Why didn't you want to make a modern good game? Wouldn't that have been better?
It kind of felt like it felt like a callback to sort of like the PS3 360 days. That's
Mm-hmm.
It felt like an action game that might have come out then. It's got really cheesy dialogue and even cheesier deliveries from the voice actors. It's got wacky character designs. It's one of those games. I don't know if it was released back then, it might be kind of seen more fondly and sort of, hell, it was limitations of the time, so they did the best they
Now
could.
the same can't be said for Atomic Heart, because that is a modern game made on modern systems, but with the craziest gameplay ideas I've ever seen. Of people want to, on various YouTubers have bitched about the narrative and the voice acting there, but I'm so much more concerned with the gameplay part. It's almost a Bioshock, it's almost a Fallout, it's almost a shooter, right? But it's not quite any of those things because it doesn't know what it wants to be. Atomic Heart is an identity crisis, I think. It's the kind of game that's like, we're going to try a bunch of stuff at once instead of getting good at one thing.
It's definitely it definitely felt like a buffet of different types of shooters that I've played, especially ones set in sort of a similar setting, like a dystopian type future or something that's gone catastrophic. And it's very in the gameplay. It's very fast paced. It almost, when I was playing with the TV with that's outputs at 120 hertz, and it was 120 FPS. It was crazy that I could keep track of everything that was going on, but I had to move so quickly just to avoid damage that a lot of times I ended up feeling dizzy at times, just fighting regular enemies, whatnot.
Yeah, it's a very fast paced game. But again, for both of these, I think there's a kernel of a good idea in here, and it is totally possible with studio updates that they could be fixed to make playable and better and more fun, and games that make sense in a modern standard. Wanted Dead is all but dead. Atomic Heart sold well enough that they're already greenlit a sequel. They've got one piece of DLC coming out, or they've had one, and another one is on its way at the time of this. So that game is a success, regardless of what we think.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that success is due to the faceless robot twin waifus that really hit the internet.
Hey, as we know from Resident Evil Village, marketing is everything, man. Now the dirt of the dirt. This, man, I don't know. Maybe you'll have this higher, but I'm going with Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac, also known as Spider-Men. I really liked playing this game a lot when you were Spider-Man or Miles. But the parts where you're regular-ass human Peter Parker, or your regular-ass Miles Morales, or your regular-ass Mary Jane Watson, or your regular-ass deaf, what's her name? I don't even remember her name. Haley?
Haley, yeah.
Miles' girlfriend? Yeah. All sucked. There was not a single part where I was not playing as one of the two Spider-Men that I liked. I hated every single bit. It was 12 times as worse as the previous game, which just had like 2 or 3 really shitty MJ and Miles stealth sections. This had extended Mary Jane sequences where she was in stealth and could like take down super ultra guys with a little stun gun and venom creatures. This is like the biggest narrative step back maybe ever. Last of Us 2. Okay, the second biggest step back ever.
Yeah, the Mary Jane section, especially in the first game, they were a really bad change of pace because it's like a completely different game, and it's much slower than playing as Spider-Man, and it's kind of tedious. And I think they could have just done that stuff in a cutscene. But in this game, it gets to ridiculous levels because, like you said, she's got that stun gun that is way overpowered, and by the end of the game, like there's 3 or 4 sections of you play as her. I was just running up to guys and just using the stun gun, and if I got spotted and shot a couple times, didn't matter. I could just take them out with one button. So it just felt really, really ridiculous there at the end.
And the actual narrative was really, really bad. I don't want to, spoil it. A lot of people really love it. I kind of hate it. I hate everything that they do with the character of Peter Parker. I hate everything they do with the lack of character of Miles Morales. He is just there. He does not have enough depth of himself. It's like, oh, the thing about Martin Lee. It's like, no, because we already did this with Peter. Everything they do with Miles in the game is derivative. And if they want him to take the mantle of the next Spider-Man, you need to give him more. More personality, more choice, his own fucking villains. Because the Kraven and Venom thing in this were both very poorly used.
And more training, too. More mentorship. I hardly felt like Peter was a mentor to Miles in this game, but by the end of the game, by the end of the story, he's telling Miles how great he is and that he can take care of New York City all by himself. And I'm thinking, like, what game were we playing? We weren't playing the same story there, because it was basically just Peter, everybody treating him like a jerk, and then him getting the Venom suit, and he has to apologize profusely over and over and over again to everybody, and tell everybody how worthless he is, and Miles has to save him, and there wasn't really any, there wasn't a mentor-apprentice sort of relationship, it didn't feel like.
My favorite part, and by favorite I mean least favorite, was when MJ, got venomed, and she had her own Venom persona. Scream, screech, who gives a fuck? And she said a lot of really stupid shit, because it's like, oh, you didn't mean it, sort of stuff, the same way Peter did. Except she didn't have to apologize for any of it. Peter apologized for it.
Yeah, it totally felt like an excuse for the writers to just have Mary Jane vent to Peter and tell him how awful he is and how selfish he is and how he's keeping her down and how she has to make all the sacrifices and give up on her dreams just to accommodate him when he's, saving the whole freaking city by himself.
It's a superhero-less city, because even though this takes place in Marvel, and Insomniac, due to a leak that we don't have time to talk about, had a bunch of their future Marvel games spoiled, Spider-Man and Miles are the only two fucking heroes in this entire city.
Yeah, God help New York City, if that's the case.
And now, based on the ending, actually it's just Miles, you got it. Manhattan and Queens. Brooklyn, sure, do it all.
Yeah, and I don't know how that's going to work because there's going to be a third game, but it's just, like you said, it's just more of Peter's villains. It's his relationships, his stories with all these characters, but they're just going to shoehorn Miles in, and he's going to do great, I'm sure. Don't even have to play it.
Well, it worked in the Oh, no, wait, it didn't work in the comics. Well, it worked in the Oh, no, it didn't work in the movies. Well, I'm sure it'll work in the games. They know what they're doing. What they did was they watched Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 and say, we can do this, but worse.
Yeah, and that had some BS time traveling and alternate universes version. It still pulled it off better. But yeah, I agree with you.
But it's fun. It's fun to play. I liked playing when you're actually playing as Spider-Man and the other Spider-Man. It's good. There's a good game in that, but it is fucking dragged down by the story and characters to a level I haven't seen, seriously, since Toulouse 2.
It was definitely fun, but because it was fun the first time I played it in the Marvel Spider-Man 1 and again in Miles Morales DLC. They added some kind of new little tricks that Peter and Miles could do, Peter more so with the Venom suit, but it was cool aesthetically with the tentacles and all that, but I kind of felt like, man, when I was playing it, I was like, man, I really want to play Prototype again, because it kind of does this a little better. But, yeah. I'm with you. It's kind of bottom tier for me, too. Fun to play. Story is garbage, but...
do you want to go run through... I'm leaving one out on purpose. Do you want to run through your worst?
Yeah, you touched on a couple of them, but some of the other ones I played... One's kind of a joke, the Gray Hill incident. It's basically, just to run it real quick, it's just basically just aliens taking over this small rural town in the USA, and It's you have to investigate and save neighbors and your kid or something like that. But it's just it's so bad. It's still a little entertaining and quite hilarious too. So that was kind of a surprise, and I won it in a contest. So I could
Yeah, you got it for free from Cheap Ass Gamer.
yeah. So that was a nice surprise. Payday 3, golly, I don't know how it's gotten to they. I don't know how they have tricked people into paying a publisher paying for 3 of these because they don't seem to get any better. They seem to get worse. And playing this game with other people is barely tolerable. Playing it by yourself is almost impossible. It's it's just so it's so tedious. It's like it takes a really fun concept, like a lot of ones that honestly guys kind of dream about, just robbing a bank without any of the repercussions. All the movies we see, but it's just Payday 3. It's just oh man, yeah, it's just not fun.
This is we've never talked about it on air, I don't think, but our history, perhaps another time, our history with this stupid franchise is not a good one.
Yeah, it's a good concept, but I think these games they just don't execute. And Payday 3 had a ton of matchmaking issues when it first launched. People couldn't find games with each other. They had to basically shut it down after a couple days when it went on the store, and they had to apologize and said, "Oh yeah, sorry about this." And it's gotten a little better, I think, but by the time the damage was done, people weren't coming back to it.
It's a PC game. This is the real problem. Like Payday 2, all the updates came on the PC first and were there for years before they ever came to console. They're a PC developer that ports shit to console, and they clearly can't handle it. Starbreeze.
They can't even handle PC because PC was having server issues as well too. It was every platform were having problems. So they can't. They don't know how to make a good game. They don't either, whether it's mechanically or technically. They just fail on both fronts. So, but again, it was a rental, so can't be too mad about it. But let's see. I have 2 others on my worst of, but I think one of them I think you and I both agree on, and another one's could be, as you put it, contentious. But should I name the one we're thinking of?
I will let you speak your truth, as the kids say, about Forspoken.
Yeah, so I didn't love Forspoken. I didn't even like Forspoken. I saw all the memes, saw all the GIFs and the clips online about it, about the character in particular, but I wanted to go in there with no bias, just try to play it and come up with my own opinion on it. And while my opinion, I don't think was as vitriolic, if that's a word, as the
Sure.
internet's was, I still just didn't really care for this game. Frey, is it Frey? Freya, the main character. She's
Yes.
she's a tad insufferable, but she didn't really stick out from a lot of the other insufferable female characters we have in a lot of movies these days. So it's not like I'm going to just completely put her on her own island of shame or whatnot. It's sort of kind of a product of just of the writing these days that we see in a lot of media. But and the magic, the bracelet that talked to was kind of, I don't know, kind of lame. I felt like could have been done a little bit better than that, or explained a little bit better. I kind of like the overall world design. It was nice. It was the same team as the ones that did Final Fantasy 15, and there was a lot of similarities between the two. But the game just kind of wants you to just zip on through it, so it doesn't seem like you have much time to enjoy it. And the story, I think I've only played like 5 or 6 hours of it, so I didn't get too far in it. There were, I don't know, there were some interesting characters, but a lot of the NPCs just ended up being kind of dull. and like Frey just sort of was sort of kind of like not totally Aloish, not really completely dismissive, but she was looking at it like,
Aloy-ish.
I'm modern lady and y'all are a bunch of hicks back in the medieval times. So
Well, yeah, because an isekai. She's from modern day New York, transported into medieval bullshit magic land.
yeah, so I don't know, I didn't much care for it. And the combat was kind of like it felt like a third person Atomic Heart to me. It was very disorienting, and you had to like zip around and just circle around the enemies a million times and wait for an opening, and it got tedious for me.
I'm just gonna jump ahead. I've got it in my mid tier for me personally. Um, I did finish it. I didn't 100% it. It is a very large game, but it is also very empty. It suffers from that we made a huge map and didn't put anything in it syndrome of modern games. And when you hear it's the same studio that made FF15, you're like, well, what happened? And the answer is a shit ton of studio interference. This game was written by not Japanese people. It was directed by not Japanese people. It stars a not Japanese person. So the degree to which the Square Enix basically fucked themselves over, because spoiler alert, the studio shut down. The Luminous who made this game got folded into Square Enix at large because it didn't sell as well. Because in typical Square Enix fashion, they overpromised and underdelivered on everything that isn't Final Fantasy.
Seemed like there was plenty of like marketing for this game, but it wasn't. A lot of it ended up not coming from Square Enix themselves, and most of it was negative. So that also kind of torpedoed the game.
The typical YouTube thing got a hold of it before the game came out, and in the early days, and it was DOA then, because they front load all the comedy in the game in those first couple of hours. After that, there's very, very little jokes at all, because like they kill children and it just becomes a fucking tragedy. But Frey herself is written very poorly. The story is very bad. The spoiler alert for the end of the game, but the power was inside her all along. You may have never been able to guess that.
Yeah, it turned out Great Woman was great all along.
So I can't dispute any of the things you say. I can just say I liked zipping around and shooting shit with magic.
I understand, and maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll be kind of hypocritical because another game that I kind of put in the mid tier that I this year was kind of similar. Similar experience, you know. It wasn't much to the world, but I just could zip around and shoot things. So, but I think that's the last. Oh well, I do have one more of my worst stuff.
Yes, I do as well. I believe it's the same one.
Yes.
Let's not try to sync it or anything. We'll just say it's Mortal Kombat 1. We had an episode about this already, so don't want to go over it too much. It's fucking terrible. It's devoid of content. It's microtransaction to hell. The character models are worse. The voice actors are worse. The story writing is worse. The moveset may be a little bit better.
I think they've made some balance changes that have thrown things out of whack as well, and there's still some characters that are really overpowered that the online community bitches about, but they've also added some ridiculous microtransactions and updates, quote unquote, especially the seasonal items where they have seasonal fatalities that cost $10 each, not for like the whole every season that they release these things for, 10 per each.
So they changed their mind after the fact, actually. The Halloween one came out, they were going to be 10 each. They got a 100% negative review on that. And they said, okay, it's $10 for all three. So now it's 333 per fatality, which is still too fucking much. $10 used to get you like 5 characters?
Yes, yeah, and that was, even then that was kind of a stretch, because if you look at it, when games used to be 60, that's, you know, what, like 17-18% of the game or something like that, or the cost of the game. But to say, okay, you paid $70 for a game, you need to pay $10 for fatality, like who there, like Warner Brothers or NetherRealm, thought that was a good idea?
Who thought the cameo system was a good idea?
I don't know. Maybe if there was the rumors that it was supposed to be Injustice 3 and that it was supposed to be a sidekick mission, which makes a lot more sense. But yeah, I think we touched on that in our review. It was bad. It was that bad, and even worse, it was disappointing that a franchise that I love, and I think we both love, and it's just sunken so low, and
it's a mirror. It failed for very similar reasons to the previous games we've mentioned. A lot of the ones we just talked about have problems with both delays and rushing them out. They have problems with bugs and lack of communication to the players, to the fucking customers that bought your stuff. It has, sorry for this word, everyone, a lot of intersectionalism, same as Forspoken and other shit did. And so that contributes to it. It's all one big thing. Warner Brothers losing its ass after spending wasting billions of dollars on streaming and Zack Snyder movies that didn't make money, is desperate to make money. So they need to microtransaction everything to hell. And their upcoming Warner Brothers thing, by the way, don't look too great either. The prospect for Warner Brothers as a whole, and NetherRealm, which is under them, it looks really bleak. Do you remember a couple of years ago, Stizzy, they were going to get sold? There was a huge thing going around that they were going to split the division. Remember when Warner Brothers and Discovery got merged? They didn't know if any NetherRealm studio game was coming out at all because they were going to transfer them to a different division.
Yeah, I do remember that. It was an extremely tenuous time, and I thought for sure NetherRealm was either going to get dissolved or sold off or what, along with all these other divisions underneath Warner Brothers, and it felt like it was just putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound at the time, and that eventually the damage is going to be too great and they're going to keel over.
Oh yeah, it's septic. Look, spoilers for the future here. I really want to play that Suicide Squad game. It's fucked. They are fucked. They're not making money on that.
Oh, absolutely not. No. And some of that is it's kind of a culmination. It's WB just getting their hands on the developers, trying to, like you said, just microtransaction every single little bit just to make a nickel wherever they can. And
Warner Brothers is in such dire straits. They had the highest grossing movie of 2023, Barbie, and are still almost $50 billion in debt.
Yeah, it's not looking good for them. And we could definitely do a whole show on the future of WB and all the games.
But as for the video games, they're large. NetherRealm, Ed Boon, everybody who works there, Tyler Lansdowne, that one guy whose name I don't remember, Steven, they all contributed to why MK1 sucks ass and is the worst game of the year for us.
Yeah, and that's sad, and hopefully it doesn't look good that they can turn it around, but we'll have to wait and see. So
I do, next year, late 2024, before they fold, if we're lucky, they'll put an offline edition where you can play the board, what the Invasions mode offline, and send a disc with all the DLC on it and all the costumes. That'd be nice. That'd be worth $30.
I'm sure there'll be an Ultimate Edition. I don't know if Invasions will ever be offline as well.
Considering it's the only single player content, it goddamn well better be.
Yeah, I don't understand why it needs to be online. It's just one of those things. You're not playing other people, you're playing bots, NPCs. So I don't know why it needs to be online too, but yeah, I may revisit it next year sometime with more of the DLC characters and more patches and whatnot.
All right, that's enough negativity, and now for some mid-olativity.
Higher tier negativity. Or lower tier positivity.
a higher class of criminal games.
And we're going to give it to them. I'll start, if you don't mind, yeah. In the mid tiers. First I got was actually the first From Software game after, the first one since they released Elden Ring. They went back to the roots, Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. And I've played some of the older Armored Core, real old, the first and second one, maybe. And I just remember them being slightly, fun action giant mech games, and that's exactly what this game is. It's just, you know, a lot better to look at than it used to be. And it's got some of the Telltale From Software sort of design. It's every mission is a separate map or kind of a different part of a map or whatnot. And it's got tough bosses with really, really neat designs and some crazy attacks on some of them. It's ridiculous. And some of them took me several tries, but this game's a lot more forgiving than a Dark Souls game. For one, the checkpoints like happen right before the boss, and I mean like right before the boss. So if you die, you can just basically just start over and you're right back there. And you can also, if you don't like your setup for a particular fight, you can also change that as well. And I really like the different weapon types that you can use, and it was fun to kind of mix and match both weapons and changing out sort of your equipment on your mech, your thrusters and your shields and whatnot, because you can have some pretty differing styles. You can kind of go for light and speedy sort, you know, dual wield pistols or submachine guns or whatnot, or you can do a more high powered arsenal with a sniper rifle or missiles and whatnot. And you can also make just a literal tank and just blow everything to smithereens in front of you. So I didn't get to finish it, unfortunately. I had to send it back before I was done with it, but I had fun with it. It was like obviously it's in my mid tier, so it's not my game of the year by any means, but it was a nice, it was what it was. It was a nice, fun action giant mech game, and if it's on sale, I'll probably pick it up and finish it off sometime, you know, in the next year or two, something like that. So yeah, I enjoyed that. Next on my list was another type of it was a Souls-like. Not developed by From Software. It was developed, I forget the name. I believe it was a Korean studio, South Korean. Name escapes me, but Lies of P was it was a Dark Souls / Bloodborne game. It to a T. It was shocking. It was one of those things I played.
You could trick someone into thinking this was Bloodborne 2.
Yes, they nailed the feel of those games, of those From Software Souls games, and it's got a lot of inspiration from both those and Bloodborne, and it was, if you like that style of game, that type of game, then yeah, I think you're gonna enjoy Lies of P. It's follows Pinocchio. He's basically he's a real boy now, and he's killing. He's got a taste for blood, and also unfortunately didn't get to finish this one as well. But I had fun with it. It's not as open as a lot of even some of the earlier Souls games are. It's a lot of the map designs is pretty linear. There are a few kind of place offshoots you can go down, some alleys that you can explore, but it usually maybe takes you a minute or two, and you'll find a chest at the end and go, oh, neat, and then go back to, you know, the main path. Yeah, so it's not a lot of, there's really not a lot of distractions in the game. It's fairly straightforward. Kind of and it also has a similar kind of quest design where you'll just find NPCs out in the world, and they'll give you kind of a vague idea of what they want you to do or what you want to pick up, and you may pick it up along the way. What I will say this, at least they give you some, if you complete your objective for those missions, if you go back to it's the bonfire, and I always forget the name of it. It's something star. And if you go to that, it'll actually show you, oh, you need to go back to this area and turn in this quest. So that's nice, because all those types of games, you know, don't really have a journal, and sometimes you can lose track. So One big issue that I did encounter, and I went online, and it was a big issue. A lot of people have brought it up. Is there's not a lot of what they call poise in these games, and what that means is being able to take an attack while you're in the middle of attack. So if you use a big, heavy, slow weapon in this game, there's a good chance if the enemy attacks you in the middle of your animation, you're going to get interrupted. And that's a huge problem because it basically negates a whole playstyle, that being the kind of the heavier, slow hitting fighting styles. And I discovered that kind of the beginning of the game when I was sort of experimenting on what I wanted to do. And after I saw that, I was just like, I was getting hit over and over, and I couldn't land a hit, and it was really annoying. So I thought, I got to pick like a dexterity weapon, a rapier or something that's quick, so I can get my hits in, and that's what I ended up having to do. And so that was a big design oversight. But other than that, yeah, it was just, if you're, like I said, if you just love those types of games, then it's definitely one for you. And it's it's nice enough to look at. But yeah, that's another one I'll probably pick up later on and finish it as the year goes on.
I'll be honest, Stizzy, I don't want to play either of those two games.
And that's a-okay. That is your choice as a gamer. Another game you'll probably not want to play, Immortals of Avium. And
you know what? I do have that on my GameFly queue, so I do.
For a lot of games we put in our lower tier, like Wanted Dead and Atomic Heart, it's got some interesting things going for it. Like, I told you off the air, I didn't completely hate it. I wasn't completely bored by it, but it just didn't have quite enough to grab me. It doesn't have what I guess you would call, quote unquote, like woke type of writing or anything like that. But it's kind of a story. It's a story you've kind of heard 100 times, just, slightly differently. It does have plenty of ugly female characters, but hey, it's like...
Well, it's a Western developed game, I would expect it.
Yeah, and I can't... Oh, God, that's another... I really should have done my research, because I'm blanking a lot of these developers' names, but it's a first-person fantasy action game. You basically just go around shooting magic beams out of your hand, and I was really disappointed in how similar a lot of the attack types were, a lot of the magic was. It's basically just kind of pick your color of magic. That's it. There's short red magic, and there's long green magic, and there's fast firing pew pew blue magic, and then that's basically it. Then it's just kind of like a min-maxing numbers sort of game where you want to get the most damage out of whatever your preferred color type is. So
I looked it up. Ascendant Studios under EA. This is the first game they made in 5 years of existing.
That's not surprising. It felt like it was either a studio's first game or its second game, because it's pretty bare bones, both story and mechanics wise.
And now, sadly, unfortunately, by virtue of me looking this up, it's reported they laid off half their staff because of its poor sales.
It's sad to hear those stories, but also not surprising. These games just seemed, I don't know what the budget is for this game, but a lot of these games seems like they have overinflated budgets and overblown staff numbers, and
Electronic Arts. What I know of it, it's got a lot of real, quote unquote, Hollywood actors in it that it didn't need. So that's probably where a big chunk went to.
Yeah, that it does have some familiar faces to them. It's not any like big names that you can instantly recognize, but it's sort of like, oh hey, I kind of know who that person is, but yeah, that definitely probably took a big chunk of the budget. But yeah, they could have just hired much cheaper models and voice actors and probably cut the costs, and maybe have not, maybe they wouldn't have hurt so much when the final sales came out. But the action, the gameplay, which is what drives the game, gets really, really old after a while, and it gets dull. And the story and the world and the characters just aren't enough to prop the rest of it up, unfortunately. But like I said, it wasn't horrible or anything. That's why I didn't put it in my lower tier. I kind of put it in my mid tier because I think, like I said, there's some good there is, and maybe if Ascendant they can get back on their feet, maybe aim a little lower, have more focus a little bit more on like story, or having kind of like a unique type of gameplay or whatnot in their next title, maybe they can do a little bit better. So here's hoping. Another game I kind of put in my mid tier, and I think we share this one, is Assassin's Creed Mirage.
I would describe Mirage as the most okay game of the year. It is like, it doesn't do anything badly, but it doesn't do anything better than any other game.
That's a good way to describe it. It definitely, Mirage, before it came out, they said they wanted to go back to their roots. Ubisoft, that is. In fact, they were splitting up Assassin's Creed, the franchise as a whole. They were going to, in one branch, they were going to make the kind of the games they've been recently, the big open world sort of RPG hybrid type games. And then on the other branch, they were going to, quote unquote, go back to their roots with the older style and emphasize a little bit, in their words, more on stealth and sort of social camouflage and kind of a smaller scale story. And you can say they achieved that much because it's a smaller map. It's basically one city and the outskirts. It's Baghdad and the surrounding area. That's it. It's a much smaller scope story. It's essentially a prequel to Valhalla.
Valhalla is 80 hours at the fastest. I don't know if this game is 10.
You could probably speed run this game in 5 or 6, maybe 7 hours. 5 maybe cutting a little on the low side, but
New Game Plus.
Yeah, I think I played like 15 or 16 hours on it, and I did a lot of extra stuff. I didn't do all the extra stuff. Definitely did get all the collectibles.
It's reflected in the price point because this wasn't a $70 game. Like everything going forward from Ubisoft will be.
I believe it was $50.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. And that's probably a fair price. I would say 40 is probably a little bit more accurate for the content you get in the game, but I know that's not current inflation prices. So.
The other thing really, this is a Ubisoft problem with their DLC, right? Because this game doesn't have DLC, it has a shit ton of cosmetic add-ons you can buy for money that don't do shit, which is nice to look at. Some tiny little boost to your short-ass game. But it's not like Valhalla that had, 4 major content packs? One of which was 10 plus hours long? Actually, the France one was like 15 hours. Yeah, Valhalla had huge chunks of game. It's a massive game. So Mirage, doesn't have any extra content once you beat the game. So they're like, what if you bought more costumes? Oh, what if we added a New Game Plus and a permadeath mode? That counts, right?
Definitely doesn't seem the type of game that they're going to work on a big DLC or an expansion on, because if I had to guess, I would say a lot of the studio members that worked on this game probably worked on DLC for the other games as well. So
this was the Dark Souls 2?
It could be, yeah. I don't know which Ubisoft studio it was. I don't know if it was Montreal or if it was France. It wasn't France. That's
another. Right? It's all of them. This is another problem. Again, we're making it sound like it's a terrible game. No. There's nothing wrong with Mirage. Ubisoft has a problem in that they have 100 studios all around the world and they all work on all their games.
So they have to patch them all together, via email or some group server or whatnot.
Which is why their shit always gets leaked early, too.
there's definitely a much greater chance for social infiltration or or sabotage, what have you.
Social stealth.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that in this game too.
Would you say you liked this more than Valhalla?
Um, this is gonna sound weird, and I'm gonna be a hypocrite because I accused you of this just the other day. But I didn't. I finished Mirage. I didn't finish Valhalla, but I think I like Valhalla more. Now, in my defense, Valhalla, as you pointed out, is a much bigger and much longer game. I played 50 hours of Valhalla, and I felt like I barely did anything in that game. Whereas Mirage, like I said, beat it in 15 hours, much smaller game type. But it's not. The gameplay is extremely simplistic, which was the aim, I know.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to just go back to just simplistic assassination type, abilities and whatnot.
This isn't like Wanted Dead or anything where they intentionally made an old shitty game. This is a modern game with modern control ideas and modern save checkpoints and shit. But it's just like, to me, I enjoyed Mirage. It's a fine game. I'd play it again. I'd probably try to 100% it. But it felt like Valhalla stripped down. Like they took the engine that they made in Valhalla and all the systems and all the mechanics and just crunched it away. Just said, no, we don't need this, we don't need this, we don't need this, we don't need this. Here's the bare bones of a game, the basic structure. With a kind of a lackluster story that didn't really do much of anything. That's my biggest criticism is like, this is a holdover game, man. This is a game to get you ready for the next. This is an in-between thing they made in a year for a cheaper price, so you get ready for Assassin's Creed Red or Japan or Jade or Hex or the VR one or the dozen other Assassin's Creed projects coming up because that's their biggest franchise.
The movie industry is going through what they call a superhero fatigue, but the game industry will soon be coming down with a Assassin's Creed fatigue very soon. And I don't know. I don't get why Ubisoft. I mean, I get it. It's probably their most popular franchise, but it's like they've never heard of oversaturation before. Because you're right. Mirage is just an appetizer to whatever the next big title is, Red or all the titles you mentioned. And it is extremely bare bones. It almost reminded me of even like a stripped down version of like the Ezio collection games as well. But it felt like as Ezio, I had a lot more option as far as assassination go. This game, it's basically all the assassinations are kind of scripted, and
yes.
they want you to kill them a certain way. That way, you can trigger a certain cutscene, and it's scripted actions take place in said cutscenes, and that's fine for a couple of them. But another thing, I guess when I hear things like emphasis on assassination and stealth or whatnot, maybe I'm kind of spoiled by the Hitman games where you are free to do whatever, and it's not just sneaking up to a guy and stabbing him in the back. There's so many other ways you can take out a target and make it look like an accident and without anybody noticing. But this game, and maybe you can use it's a much older time period and setting as an excuse, but I just would have liked a little more freedom in how I dispatch my targets. So, but like you, I had, I enjoyed the game. It was fun for what it was.
Yeah, I'll replay it probably here in a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's why I said it's the most middle game. It's neither good nor bad. It's neutral.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Next game I have here. This is I have two more on my mid-tier list, but they're kind of. I just put them here, just like I said off air, just to balance things out because my high-tier games list is a lot longer. So I thought I should put a couple more down here that are sort of like in between. They're in limbo, as it were.
Sure.
And the first one. And this might also be in your tier list, mid-tier. I'm not sure. Diablo 4
Yep.
was I ended up just slotting it in the middle of the road because I didn't. There are a lot of things that I thought they improved on from the third game. One being the art design. I liked a little bit more grounded looking models and environments. I think it kind of fits the world of Diablo a little better than sort of
the cartooniness of 3.
yeah, the sort of like not kiddie, but like yeah, cartoonish. Guess would be the best word for what we were going for in 3. This one they try to make it look a little more realistic, a little more grounded, and I think it helped a lot, especially when it came to a lot more of the danker, grosser dungeons. You could really, they really a lot of the ones that like swamplands or have the cavern covered in blood looked really, really disgusting, and kind of it really pulled me. It made me believe, yes, this is the world of Sanctuary. This is what it would look like in Diablo, where just death is around every corner.
In a world that, or in a year that had the Mortal Kombat game come out, Diablo 4 is grosser and grimier and greasier.
Yeah, it would be sickening if this was a third or even a first-person game. Just going through some of these dungeons, fighting some of the enemies. A lot of them are similar to what you fought in 3. Some different ones. There's, like a lot of the Diablo games, a lot of the different maps are very different from one another. You start off kind of in a snowy mountain, then you go to a green forest with thick trees, and then there's a sand, desert place, and now the combat itself was, I'm not a veteran of this series by any means, but it felt a lot similar to what 3 was. I played a rogue as my my main, like my first classic character that I picked to go through the story, and unfortunately I wanted to go with an archer class, but I couldn't ever make it work and maybe that was just I didn't allocate my points in my talent tree the correct way. Maybe there is a quote unquote meta for each class or whatnot, but I just couldn't figure out a way to make a long range style work really effectively. So I ended up just going for just dual wielding daggers and backstabs and stealth and laying traps and whatnot. And it worked really well. I mean, I was able to take out things pretty handily, and every once in a while I would move up a world tier, but I think I ended up going to the max that is allowed in your first playthrough. I think it's world tier 2.
That's where my big point of contention comes in with Diablo, is like, one, it's always online, so if you lose your connection or you have to wait in the server queue, you're fucked. But the tier system is basically like a forced handicap instead of a optional handicap, right? Because previous games have had this, where you can decide to move up whenever you want, basically. Diablo 4 to me was Diablo 3, but slow. Everything took longer. It took longer to get places. Dungeons took longer to beat. The bosses took longer to beat. It took longer to level up. It's just like, they just made everything in this game slow to a fucking crawl for me, which is why, I don't know. I had fun playing it. I have picked it up since you and I had that disastrous hardcore run. But it just takes a long time to get not a lot done.
Well, I wouldn't say it was a disaster. It ends in the way a probably majority of hardcore runs ended, in our deaths. But it did end very abruptly. It was quite disappointing. But I guess I didn't play enough of 3. I didn't really notice too much change in the pace of the play between the two titles. Maybe I have to go back and play 3. I don't remember the dungeons in 4 can be quite long. I remember the ones in 3 were quite shorter, but they were more numerous, which is also, I mean, honestly for me, if I'm in a dungeon, I just want to be in there and get it done. I don't want to go to I don't want to have my whole mini map look like a checkerboard where it's like all these little, little dungeons that I have to go in for 4 or 5 minutes and then come out. It gets really annoying and tedious for me. But and this game has its fair share. 4 does, but Yeah, luckily I got a like I was saying I got a playstyle or a class a talent tree adjusted where I was able to get through enemies pretty well, but it required a lot of button mashing and my fingers would start hurting after a while just from pressing the square and the triangle button so much. So that got really really old, but that's just my own
That's
personal
Diablo.
experience. Yeah, and that's a lot of it. That is a lot of it too, because when you're surrounded by enemies and you don't, the difference between living and dying may depend on if you are able to pull off this ability quickly
Mhm.
and proc a health gain or whatnot, or get your next potion or something like that. But story was it was what it is. Like I said, I'm not a veteran, so I don't really know too much about the relationships. I was kind of disappointed on the lack of Diablo in the Diablo game. Um, but that might be to be expected this far into the series. Now that this is the fourth title, and its previous games have had several expansions each, I think, or at least one or two, and it's they. I feel like a lot of it they might have been trying to cash in on like what you described earlier, that Dimitrescu from Resident Evil 8 marketing ploy.
Yeah, with Lilith, their main villain.
Yeah, maybe they wanted just like get a little waifu there. Because once I learned who she was, she's the daughter of one of the prime evils, I thought, okay, I guess that could be, I mean, she could be a difficult foe, but that's sort of a step down from one of the big evils that you're usually accustomed to fighting in these games.
Yeah, Diablo 3 had you fight all four, and in Diablo 4 you fight zero.
So, yeah, it didn't, definitely kind of felt like a step down, and it was had this story with the devils and the angels, and of course the angels are assholes in the Diablo universe. So
Hmm.
it's like they kind of wanted me to
It,
feel sympathy.
narratively, narratively, I told you about this off air. I don't know if we ever spoke about it under, but this isn't a sequel to Diablo 3 because none of the things that happened in 3 matter at all in this game. It is a sequel in number only. The previous games were in line with each other. The characters didn't appear, but they were mentioned. The events of the previous games happened already. In 4, it's as if we might as well call this 1 again. There's no reason to have this be number 4. It has nothing to do with any of them.
No, it almost seems like they wanted to start a new set of series revolving around Mephisto, but the problem is they didn't start with him. They started with his daughter, and which is a shame because I really would have liked to fight. I would have liked it if Mephisto was the last boss because he seemed like a really cool enemy. Um, but it is what it is, and they also, unfortunately, there was also a female character that was great,
Oh yeah,
and
played by what's her name from that movie that no one saw. Yeah.
I can't even remember what she really looked like or what her name and the character's name was, but she had one of the most BS endings of any game I played this year, where like I don't remember all the details. She basically just takes the power of Mephisto and she says, "Okay, I'm special, so I won't ever get corrupted by his power. So I'm just going to go on a journey for no apparent reason, and I'm sure everything will be okay. Okay, bye." And that's it. That's the ending.
Yeah, when you told me about it, it seemed like one of those games that's just like, yeah, nothing you did as a player in the game made it fucking matter at all.
No, it felt like we were just softening Lilith and Mephisto up for this girl to come in and just steal the power. And
Gemma Chan, I remembered her name.
oh, okay, yeah, that does sound familiar now. But yeah, I'm sure she'll be totally fine, and she won't be corrupted, and she won't be the boss for a DLC or an expansion or anything like that. But so it had a garbage ending, and there is end game after there is end game content. There's more dungeons and more talent trees that you can unlock and attributes you can increase. But I didn't really play it too much after I beat the game because leveling. Talk about slowing things to a crawl. The level progression was it was like molasses trying to get through a level. It was got to the point where sometime in my late 30s and level 4 in the 40s, it would take me the better part of like 3 or 4 hours just to get one level. It was absurd how long it took. And I don't know if that's just experience scaling or experience distribution between, quest lines or enemies you kill or whatnot. It might be all of those, but that really, really soured my experience with the game going towards the end. And it just kind of made it feel like I was just like humping over a hill or something like that. And it's just, ugh.
I think I said this in the show we did about Diablo, but this game thinks there are no other games for you to play.
It's definitely a huge time investment to really get everything you want out of this game, and that's not even assuming you're going to play other characters. That's just like with one character.
Yeah.
If you want to play them, then you got to sink a lot of hours into it. So it just ended up. It was fun for quite a bit at the beginning, but like I said, the really slow progression at the end of the game, and plus a forgettable villain and story just put it at the mid tier for me.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
My last one in the mid tier, and I think this game could have gone in my higher tier just for a few tweaks, is I put Star Wars Jedi Survivor in the mid tier. And I would say it's probably upper mid tier. And I originally had it in my best of because I really enjoyed this game. I thought it was better than its predecessor in pretty much almost every facet. It was,
yes.
I love seeing the returning characters. I especially Cal. Like Cal was great in this game. Mm-hmm. He's different from a lot of male characters you see in a lot of media these days. He wasn't like he wasn't an asshole, but he had a goal and he knew it was the right thing to do. And so he saw that goal to its completion, no matter what. And I think that earns a lot of respect from him, in the story with other characters too and whatnot. And ultimately it does still sort of almost suffer a little bit from a lot of these other Star Wars TV shows and properties that revolve around the time of the original trilogy, like this game does. It's kind of I think it's still technically a prequel to A New Hope.
Yes.
And in that it sort of feels like it's a small group of, small faction of people fighting against the Empire, but these people weren't in the original trilogy, so they ultimately don't have anything to do with bringing down the Empire. But I think for the little slice that this game cuts out with these characters and how they fight the Empire, what fronts they do battle on, and the people they help, I think it helps a lot. And I got, I was invested in them too.
Mm-hmm.
And
this was your top mid. This isn't my high, but I might as well go over it because it's probably at the bottom of the high. As you said earlier, it is an improvement on basically every way, in the combat, in the narrative, in the platforming. I hardly ever fell to my death in Jedi Survivor, as opposed to Fallen Order, which I fell to my death 1,000,000 times.
Maybe you should just get good. You ever think about that?
That's the other thing. This is a bigger game and a harder game, frankly, than Fallen Order. But you 100%ed Fallen Order. And I played through that thing 3 times and just could not be asked to find every stupid little chest.
Yeah, I just got a brain bug for that game. I just thought, okay, I got most of these trophies, might as well just complete the set or whatnot. So I did end up going through all those levels, and that was a pain in the ass because there was no fast travel in Fallen Order. But luckily in Survivor there is. There is it's a lot easier to navigate through the areas, the different maps, and there's some big ones. There's one main one that you're pretty much almost all the events of the game take place on.
Yeah, Cowboy Planet, whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm. It was... I almost said Manon, but that's not it. That may come to me later. But
it might have been Kobo. Look, Star Wars planets are all just wibble wobble nonsense.
Yeah, a lot of vowels.
Go listen to our Jedi Survivor episode. We already talked about it, but yes, it is a. My criticisms of the game are more about individual moments in the story rather than the story itself. I think it's a huge improvement overall. And the fact that you can only have 2 forms at once. It's like, come on, man. In Jedi Outcast, I could switch between 3. And that was a fucking GameCube game. Let me have more than one set. You had to go, like, your bench. It's like, right, do you want one-handed lightsaber or two-handed? Do you want the stupid crossguard or do you want a blaster also? So I like the variety, but I would have liked it more if I was able to switch the variety more.
Oh, for sure. I think I really could have used a radio menu that you could open up and switch your styles at will. That would have been really, really cool. But yeah, I did like most of the forms they added, even the stupid crossguard, which makes no sense for a lightsaber. But
I hate
it. It is very, very ridiculous looking when you got the two little lightsaber emitters just poking out the sides there.
I've had a very Star Wars filled year. Jedi Survivor was the best bit of Star Wars for me this year, ahead of everything else I saw.
Yeah, I think it proved that there's a lot of magic to happen in this universe, and there's a lot of adventure.
It has to be given to the right people who care.
Yes, yeah, and story-wise, I do think I liked it better than Fallen Order, but I kind of wish they had switched to antagonists. I think we talked about this on our show. I kind of wish the quote-unquote the main Dark Jedi or main Sith guy had a little bit more to do and was a little bit of a bigger threat, and didn't have a ghost arm because that was kind of dumb as well.
It did rely a little too heavily on the twist for the last hour of the game.
It did, but honestly, my biggest issues with the game were just from a technical aspect, because I don't know what it was, but this game runs really, really slow on PS5, and I couldn't get even on a performance mode. I couldn't reliably get 60 frames per second to go. It was more like 30 or 45 on average. And I experienced a couple crashes as well. And this was, I'd say, 2 or 3 months after the fact when I got around to playing it. And the game was already gigantic enough as it was, gigabytes wise. I think it ended up being well over 110, maybe 120, something like that.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, it was a chonker. So if they could have patched those out better and just made it a little bit more stable, then it would have been a much smoother experience. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, likewise. I absolutely recommend it. It's in my low-high tier, shall we say.
Yeah, those are all the mid-tiers I have. I don't know.
Okay.
You probably have some different ones, I'm sure.
Yes, but the ones I have are going to be in your high tier, so we might want to wait till we get to there on that. The other one I don't have that you didn't play because you didn't have an Xbox until a couple weeks ago, Hi-Fi Rush, I would put here. Again, there's a good game in here. I just found the characters irritating, because the main character you play as is a fucking moron. He's like Fry from Futurama levels of stupid. And the partner you're always talking to is a girl who's 1,000 times smarter than him with a side swipe haircut. Half shaved on one side. You know, your favorite kind of hairstyle.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, just imagine how insufferable she is. That's how insufferable she is.
Yeah, I got that on my hard drive on my Xbox, so I'll get around to it eventually. But,
it is a fun rhythm action game to play once you get the beats down. It's like, okay, you always have to be attacking on beat, and it works the way they designed it. But the characters suck.
Yeah, it really looks really bright and colorful, and music seems to play a big factor in it. So it seems like an interesting concept. But yeah, we'll see when I get to it.
A real quick shout out to games I did not finish that I think are worth your time because I'm going to spend more time with them. Jusant, from the people who made the Life is Strange games, Don't Nod, is a dialogue-less climbing game. Shadow Gambit Cursed Crew is a stealth strategy game where you play as ghost pirates. Proteus did not come out this year, but everyone should fucking play Proteus. And I just beat that. Atlas Fallen is like Forspoken without an annoying protagonist. You do a lot of magic and slide around everywhere in a big desert world. And Trine 5, it's Trine. If you've played one of them, you've basically played them all. Still worth it, though.
It's still co-op, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
3 was the only one to not be co-op, strangely.
Yeah, I remember.
Or not online co-op, I should say. Not online.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was just couch co-op, whatever they call it. So, yeah, interesting. I know. Yeah, I got Proteus. I played a little bit of it, having fun with it. I've heard of a couple of those other two, so I may have to give those a try myself.
Yes, I recommend them. But except for Proteus, I've not finished any of them, so I didn't want to put them in this list. And now for what we're calling high-tier games, the top shelf stuff, the best of the best games of 2023.
Yes.
Or maybe not. Stizzy, when we were doing our pre-show research, which we normally never do, but this is, kind of matters, it occurred to me that I had no Nintendo games on my list. I played a lot of Nintendo games, but nothing that came out in 2023. Luckily, you've got us covered.
Yeah, I played a few Nintendo ones that came out in 2023. There was a couple big ones, and they were kind of spread out through the years. It's funny how it worked that way. Beginning of the year, Fire Emblem Engage came out, and I'm a relatively new fan in the Fire Emblem gaming community, or not community, but the scene, and I've liked most of the new ones. I know a lot of the older fans think they're garbage, but I think they're pretty entertaining games. I think they're solid strategy games. And for the most part, I like the characters and their designs and, all the general storyline. Some are better than others. I really like Three Houses, which was the previous title, came out in 2019. But it had kind of had a lot of grayness to it. A lot of characters that were, not necessarily you would put in the good or the bad category, and it, had a story that kind of made you think and had to choose a side and whatnot. But Fire Emblem Engage is really much more straightforward. It's basically you're the good guy. Here's the evil supervillain. That is reigned for thousands of years, and you need to destroy them, and you meet some colorful characters along the way.
And you have colorful hair. That's all I know about it.
Yes, two colors, in fact, red and blue. Yeah, I think the designs in this game were kind of the worst I've seen for a lot of them. There's some good ones, but others are just way too out there, flamboyant, or just flat out just don't look good. But I think it was they followed the formula that they have set pretty well. It played very, very solidly for a typical Fire Emblem game. In fact, I think even though I liked Three Houses better, I think it was more mechanically sound than Three Houses, and it took away a lot of the fat that kind of plagued some of the previous titles of the genre. And some people say it kind of simplified it, but I think it needed that in some areas. I thought a lot of the systems became bloated over time, and I think they did a really, really good job of not exactly streamlining it, but making it more focused, more like there's not a lot of I'm trying to think of the right word, but yeah, it's a much better. It plays very, very well, and the story is pretty simple, like I said, and the characters are actually not bad. I liked a lot of their interactions, and I didn't get to see all of them, and I didn't beat the game. I got very, very close, but other games started coming out around that time, and it's very, very long too. But I had a pretty good time with it. I enjoyed it. And in fact, another game that got in the way that came up was another Nintendo title, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which was one of the big anticipated releases of this year. And because the previous game, Breath of the Wild, was a huge success for Nintendo, and it was widely acclaimed and was very popular. And while I enjoyed Breath of the Wild quite immensely, it took a while to get used to getting away from the old style of the Zelda games, and it wasn't necessarily a dungeon crawler. Or there are dungeons, but they sort of kind of run together, what with the layouts and the architecture in them. Whereas the previous Zelda titles have always kind of made their name on having very, very, like, the dungeons that stood out, and there was always some tool you had to use. But Breath of the Wild and its sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, they're huge sandboxes, and it's a ton of fun to see what you can do in this world and what you can interact with, and the different solutions you can come up with, even the most like mundane of problems you may come across the world. And it takes a long time to really sink your teeth into it, and it's hard. It's very easy to get distracted in the game, because it's definitely one of those you may have an objective picked out, but then you see something off in one direction and you want to go explore that, and next thing you know, you're off kind of chasing other areas that catch your eye. And for an open world game, I think that's one of the most important draws to an open world game. You need that sense of adventure of what's over the next hill or valley or whatnot, and make me want to go see what it is.
Absolutely. When I didn't play it, obviously, but when the game launched, there were just an absolute ton of videos about people building ridiculous creatures and, giant wooden and metal monstrosities using magnets and wind power, and, building cars and building ships and building giant, effigies with flaming peni.
Oh, it was really remarkable seeing all the creations in the community came up with, even just with the tools that I was familiar with. There's some stuff that people came up with that I would have never thought of, and they kind of some of them actually helped me along my journey when I was able to kind of look at things in a different way. And I think that's really cool, and that's really neat that a game would allow that much freedom for its fans. Now, having been distracted so much in the game, I haven't really gotten too much into the story itself, so I don't know if it still has a lot of the problems that I had with the previous title, and that it was kind of hard to follow because there wasn't really much there as far as like plot development went. It was basically, there's a evil monster, they lose to him, Link goes to sleep, Zelda's like containing him for 100 years, and then you bet to go find people and fight him, and that's pretty much it. But I think I'm definitely in the minority, I think, of the Zelda fan base, in that I wish they kind of went at it a little more like cinematic, not like Last of Us or a God of War, the new titles, like not that cinematic, but maybe just a little bit more time with the characters and have them interact with each other and develop them in a relationship or whatnot, and maybe get to know a little bit more about them, so we can actually get an investment in these people and in this world, because the world itself is, it's fun to explore and go around and whatnot, but you don't interact. There aren't like big groups of people that you you interact with, and you say, okay, this is why I'm the hero. This is why what I'm fighting for, to protect these people. It's more like, okay, there's some like outposts and a few stragglers out in the open world, but like, who am I saving the world? Who am I saving the world for? Sometimes it feels like, but it may change. I don't like. I think I've gotten through enough story where it's definitely not their focus with these games, and that's okay, because there's enough good stuff where I can kind of overlook a lot of that as well. So it's definitely one of those games I knew when I booted it up for the first time, I was like, I'm gonna be playing this for a long time, just like Breath of the Wild. So definitely looking forward to more.
Good, then.
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to more time with it in the future. And then the last of the 2023 Nintendo titles that I played was a remake, Super Mario RPG, and it's a remake of one of my most favorite games, one of my most favorite RPGs as a child, was Super Mario RPG, and it is one of my favorite Mario games, and it might be considered for the favorite Mario game of all time. And this remake did not disappoint. It was a blast, and I love how they adapted everything for the updating the graphics and the controls, and made it a lot more accessible for people. Not like the standard, colorblind modes or anything like that, but they added some new mechanics that really helped with your battle timing and whatnot.
Yeah, so as I was going to ask, like, I never played the original. You know me, would I like this?
Probably not. But to be honest, I've kind of given up trying to think if you would like a game or not, because I got a pretty good idea, but since it's Mario and it is a JRPG.
Well, my favorite Mario ever is also an RPG. It's Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door.
You might like it. I may be wrong. It's a turn-based RPG. I know you've played some of those, and that
was my favorite genre of JRPG. In fact,
yeah, that's one of my favorites as well. So you can give it a try, definitely, and see.
It's in my rental queue.
Yeah, see what you think about it. But it's a nice, simple story. Doesn't change anything that I can remember from the original. I played the original a few years ago, and it's pretty like one-to-one, like faithful remake adaptation, whatnot. So it doesn't deviate too much. But like I said, they make the battle system. They give you little tips and tricks that you can do in this newer version that help things out immensely, and it makes the game, frankly, almost too easy at times. But it's nice that those are there nonetheless, because you can always play a new game with a higher difficulty and get a little extra edge, which I actually did. Played a higher difficulty game, and it's actually tough. You kind of have to know the weaknesses, and you got to nail your because it is turn-based, but when you attack, you can, if you time your button press right, you can add extra damage to your attack, or you can defend from attacks with a button press. And you got to really nail those down in the higher difficulties. So I was really glad to revisit it, and it is nice to see it. What it seems like one of the least popular Mario titles kind of get some attention.
Are you kidding me? When Smash was still going, everybody wanted that stupid puppet.
Yeah, they want the puppet, but it seemed like the game was always kind of shunned to the side. But maybe I just wasn't in the right circles or not. But there was never any effort to port it, from what I remember. It wasn't put on Nintendo Switch Online at all, and it kind of seemed like it was like the redheaded stepchild of the Mario catalog. So it was really, really nice to see it come back.
And my favorite Mario game is also getting a remaster for Switch sometime. I don't remember, it's 24 sometime.
Yeah, Thousand Year Door. That's right. Which is not the first Paper Mario; it's the second one, right?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty solid year for the Nintendo titles. But I also played a lot of the older ones, so those were the only new ones from last year, 2023, that I was able to get to. Should I start? I know I got more on my list than you. Should I go to the next one or?
Let's do the remakes.
Okay, yeah. Go right in the next remake, which also came out early in the year, the Dead Space remake.
So I have this in my mid tier. So I was kind of waiting on it.
Yeah, I guess if I had to rank it somewhere, I'd put it in lower high tier, kind of like where you would put Jedi Survivor was on your list.
Oh yeah, sure. Because I basically have Genesis at the bottom of the high, so to speak. But it's not that it's a bad game because it is. It's the opposite. It's a great game. If this is your first like Dead Space game ever, this would be fantastic. 10 stars. My problem, this is personal. This is not against the game. It's not my first Dead Space game, and it is, except for a few character changes and character model changes and placement changes. It is 1-to-1 remake. I couldn't tell you about Resident Evil or Paper Mario, but Dead Space I played like 5 times, 6 maybe. Just the first one. I used to play it every year for Halloween. It was one of those weird rituals I did. So I was very familiar with it. So when he does the remake, and it's like, well, this is just a prettier version of what I already liked. So in my mind, that detracts from it rather than adds to it.
I think it's kind of interesting. It's this is probably a discussion for another day, but it's I think when it comes to remakes and remasters, I think horror genres kind of have their own special like subspace because like no horror movie or no horror game is going to have quite the same effect after the first time because after you've seen it once, then you know all the jump scares, you know the twists, which there is a big one in Dead Space. And that was actually I had to ask you about it because I only played the first Dead Space once, and it was years ago. But they did actually change something with the story late in the game, with a certain character.
Yes.
So they did. I mean, there were a few alterations, but I don't know. Like I'd have to go back and see the original. I don't know if it really added anything or if it altered it even negatively.
Beyond the character additions and giving the biggest change really is not Nicole's model, but Isaac's voice, because he didn't speak at all in the original first game. They did get a voice actor for 2 and 3, so they got that guy back to do the voice for 1, and they just gave him a ton of lines. They took lines away from other characters to give to him, which I think is kind of shitty. But the actual like gameplay and layouts of the maps and when monsters spawn and even when loot spawns is the exact same.
I definitely agree with you about Isaac's voice. I don't mind him having a voice because, like you said, he did have 1 and 2 and 3. But at that point, instead of taking lines away from other characters, you need to give Isaac his own unique lines, and whether that changes the whole dynamic of a interaction or a conversation, then so be it. I say, at least that you got to change it up a little bit.
That's why I say the original is still the best horror game ever, because it is quiet. There's very little music in the game ever, and it is all about atmosphere. So you're walking silently through a corridor, you get metal on metal of your footsteps, and then somebody cuts in on your comm, and that's scary. But it's your friend, or so you think. And they're there to talk to you, tell you to do the next thing, and you go boom, and you go to the next thing, and slowly walk down the corridor in metal on metal again. So having Isaac talk during that kind of sucks the terror out of it.
Ishimura was definitely it's its own character, and you really got that sense even the original, just going along like you said, walking in silence, and you just hear the creaking and groaning of the pipes or water leaking from a ceiling or something. You don't know what's going to come next, and um, yeah, I don't know. I still have a problem with them making, letting Isaac talk. I thought it took me like an hour before in the original before I realized he wasn't talking. I was like, okay, this is kind of strange. Why isn't this guy talking at all? But I guess it could detract a little bit from the tension. I could see that.
But again, this is entirely personal. Maybe other people who like the original too, but um, because I'm so used to the original, so deviations are like, wow, you changed this. So we have to ask why they changed it. Why, indeed, Stizzy? Serious question. Did they change Nicole's model from being roughly 30, 35 years of age to about 60?
I don't know. I honestly don't, especially considering Isaac's model actually looks like he's a man in his 30s, maybe early 40s at the worst. But Nicole, they got a older looking actress to be her model this time around. I don't get it because she is pretty much the same age as Isaac. They're a couple. They are together, so I don't know why they had to. I don't want to use the word uglyfy, but just ageify her.
They aged her
Yeah,
up. They aged her up.
yeah.
They did also race swap one of the non-important characters that also has no voice in the original, but they gave like 3 lines to. They race and gender swapped them, but that's the peril of living in modern times, I guess. The Kellyan wasn't diverse enough. I don't know. Anyways, it it's not like I'm shitting on it like I do for everything. It is a great game. It is still fun to play. It is still tense and tight. And when you're in like the last 2 chapters and monsters are just coming at you everywhere, it's very, very tense.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, it was definitely a blast to play and come back to it and see it just in its new modern looking glory. But its graphics, I mean, but it didn't have the same feeling as the first time when I played the original for that. The very first time. You just can't recapture that in the same way. But it was a good one. It was a fun game.
And now for the third remake on our list.
We live in an age of remakes, Loki.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Technically, I have 4 remakes. I might have no, excuse me, 5. But
Oh my god.
the one that I'm guessing the both of us actually played is Resident Evil 4 remake.
So this one I also had in my mid list, and this is again not because of the game. This is me. I also already played this. Like you'll be able to speak more, authoritatively, shall we say, on the changes of the game. But I don't feel like it was a major change. Placements of characters, maybe they missed a few things, took out a boss fight, freaking whatever. But it's largely the same game. With this is actually maybe a bigger departure than Dead Space, because Dead Space is practically 1-to-1, and Resident Evil changes models and locations and characters and adds dialogue and adds cutscenes and removes a couple of stupid ass things, adds more layers. But it still feels like a game I've already played on the GameCube 20 years ago.
It's definitely not a carbon copy like Dead Space can feel like at times. It does have all those changes that you listed, and I think one of the biggest changes is I probably with the shooting in it. It's still over the shoulder, which Resident Evil 4 was the first one in the series that had that point of view. But this one takes the controls from the 2 and 3 remakes and puts it in 4, and then adds like a parry system that you can do, which is very useful. Although I kind of wish they'd kept the dodge from 3 as well.
I kind of wish you didn't have a bitchy little knife that broke every time you did it.
Yeah. Although I think if you perfect parry, you could save some of the durability. Plus, you get a lot just going around grabbing kitchen knives and whatnot. I didn't have a huge issue with it, but it was a nice. I don't know. It was a nice restriction to keep you from just like parrying everything and having absolutely no damage done to you.
But that's what I want.
I know you do, but we got to have some challenge in the game, and it can't.
It is very. I have found every one of these new Resident Evils since 7 hard to varying degrees. Like 7, Village, Remake 2, Remake 3, Remake 4. They're all like, man, this is tough. And it's by design, and it's on purpose why they do it. Because they want to basically bring back the survival of the horror aspect. It's like you are resource managing here.
It definitely was it was definitely the case in 2. That was the most difficult part, is juggling the resources and going back and forth, and trying to save your bullets, and avoid enemies when you can. 4 felt more difficult. Not so much from that. There is some times where, especially when you start a new game, it's early and you kind of, you're running low on ammo and you might have to use your resources to craft more, but it felt more difficult in just the action aspect of it, at least for me. And well, I agree with you. It is extremely similar from the original. And I think if you put a gun to my head, I would still say the original is better, or I would put it on a 5, had an all-time greats list, it would be higher. But I think they changed up enough in 4 Remake where it felt fresh enough for me. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a lot of times in Dead Space Remake where I'd go, oh yeah, this is fun, but yeah, I've done this already. There comes that enemy. Okay, he pops out of there, yada yada. This one, there were parts of the game you could see coming, like the village, like the water room in the castle. But then there were other places where they're either entirely new environments, new rooms, or they would combine different features from like places in the old game into one area in the new game. And I think they were able to pull it off pretty well for the most part. There were some places, especially in the castle. The castle gets trimmed a lot in the remake.
Yes.
It's much shorter than it was in the original. And there were definitely some places and some enemies that I wish you could see, or wish that were in the remake from the original.
There's a whole giant clockwork statue they took away. One of the goofiest parts of the original 4. I wish that was in the new one.
Oh yeah, I love that in the original, because that felt like a holdover of some of the corniness, the goofiness that's been instilled in the Resident Evil franchise since the beginning. But with these new crop of remakes, it seems like they're trying to slowly phase that out.
Yeah.
And I personally don't like that. I like the cornball lines, but
It's, you know what's interesting? I played it on Xbox, right? So, whenever time I got an achievement, it was a corny line. It was the "your right hand" or whatever, or "no thanks, bro." It was that shit, but it was for achievement and trophy names. It's like, you could have put that in the game, Leon does say some goofy shit, but not as much as it used to.
No, and I think the voice actors as a whole were kind of terrible in this game, in this remake. I mean, they varied from okay to flat out just awful.
Well, we know who we're talking about for the awful, but I think the guy who played Leon, he started on 2, right? And then he went to one of the animes, Infinite Darkness, I think, the animated series.
Oh, the guy for Leon? Yeah, I don't remember his name, but yeah.
Nick Aspatalos or something? He's going to Greek last name.
Yeah. He's pretty good. I like him. I think he's getting better. I still prefer Matt Mercer.
Well, good news. If you see the movie Dead Island, he's in it.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's
Death Island, excuse me, not Dead Island.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. And I think the girl who played Ashley was actually an improvement of the original, and she was a lot less annoying than she was in the OG.
Okay, major compliment to the game. The biggest thing I have to say about the game. In the original game, you had to collect a red herb, a green herb, and a yellow herb, and combine them and use them on yourself in order to up your health. Or you could use them on Ashley to up her health. In the remake, they said, "Nah, don't worry about Ashley's health. Just don't let her get taken away or killed. You don't have to give her herbs to make her stronger." And I was like, "Thank God," because that was the worst thing, having to waste resources on her.
I don't know what they were thinking about that in the original. That's definitely an improvement. Yeah, this game, the remake, if she gets hit once, she goes down. If she gets hit again, she's dead. Or, yeah, if she gets carried away, then it's game over. So it was a lot easier to keep track of her. And even bring back the Ashley's armor secret costume, so that's nice. She doesn't take any damage. She's too heavy for
And
everybody.
her side section doesn't have a stupid slider puzzle. So there you go. It's wins all around.
It's got stupid keys you got to keep track of, but other than that, yeah, it's much better.
Now the Ada bit. So we don't know, and we probably never will know what went on behind the scenes or why they changed voice actors from Resident Evil 2 remake to Resident Evil 4. But they did. And they got the lady who played Ada in the movie Welcome to Raccoon City, which by all accounts was a piece of shit. So her name is Lily Gal, and she's awful at her job. If it weren't for, was she worse than Megan Fox from Mortal Kombat 1? Probably, because she has more lines.
Oh boy, that's a toss up. I would say
You hear Natara speak less than you do hear Ada.
that definitely helps Megan Fox's case for sure. But yeah, Gal's not great. And that's putting it mildly. But there were others I didn't really like. I didn't like the direction they took with Krauser's voice. In the original, in the original, he sounded like this grizzled, gruff veteran. And
what do you fight for, comrade?
He had this really badass, gravelly voice, and this one was kind of it wasn't bad, but I don't know. He sounded like the cop that pulls you over, not the badass commando.
It is very similar to what they did with Sadler and Salazar, in that they took kind of the campy goofiness out of it. I loved that Sadler, the final boss, the evil villain, always talked like a vampire. In Resident Evil 4. That's great. That's Resident Evil cheesiness. And the remake, they're like, nah, serious man for serious times.
For real, in the remake, for the first few lines I heard Sadler speak, I thought he had a southern accent. I was like, what is this new direction they're going with? Aren't they in the middle of Europe? Like Spain?
Spain,
usually,
even.
Yeah. So, yeah, I missed that too. And I think Salazar as a whole was just kind of a step down just from his design and his voice. And just the back and forth he'd have with Leon in the original.
Yeah.
I thought he was great in that. But this one, not so much. I like how one of the biggest changes was his fight. The Salazar fight. Whereas in the original, he's basically just these two giant tentacles that you have to shoot at. In the remake, he's this annoying flying flesh monster thing, and he is very difficult. He's one of the hardest bosses in the whole game.
You also have I don't remember, it's been a very long time since I played the original, but I think in the remake they give you a bigger area to fight him in too.
Yes, because there was an upper level and then there was a lower level, and you could just go all around that lower level and avoid attacks and whatnot. And in this one, it is in the remake it is separated into levels, but it's much less ground you can traverse in. So, and you just gotta like run around and avoid him from slamming you and shooting his black muck at you and shit like that. And yeah, it's and it takes a long time to get him down. It's very.
Or you can do what I did and save a few pesetas for an RPG.
That's what definitely what I did in the next playthrough. When I met him, and it made things go much smoother.
Oh, the merchant too. They also changed the merchant's voice. Yeah, you know what? Maybe this remake isn't so good after all.
I think it's a net positive overall, but
Sure.
there's a lot of little things that I just kind of I thought
what they're
I just, a lot of little things that I would see and I think, not as good as the original. I liked it better than the original.
What they're trying to do is line them all up, right? It's like they did 2 remake for whatever reason because they'd already done 1 on the GameCube, a long time ago. And then they said, well, that was a hit. Make 3 remake real fast. And so they did and had to cut a lot of corners and content. But they were still successful enough. It's like, well, fuck it, make 4 remake. So what they're doing is lining all of these up basically to make them more canonical with each other, shall we say?
My personal head canon, my head theory is that 2 and 3 remake were made solely just to gauge the reception of the fan base so they could eventually get to this game, get to the 4 remake, because it's still to this day the most successful of any of the Resident Evil titles.
The most popular, yeah.
Yes, most popular one. And this one also sold a shit ton. I don't know the exact numbers or anything, but I know it sold a lot. Probably more than 2 and 3 remake, if I had to guess. So now they have matched everything canonically. And where they go next, I don't know. Personally, I'd like to see one of my favorite Resident Evils remade, Code Veronica, but the hope for that is getting slimmer by the day. So
I would hope that they take a break for a few years, maybe a generation, and get to let's go forward here, because they're doing these animated series, and the other various stuffs. It's like we need to move this franchise forward at some point. We can't tell every Leon and Chris story every single time, every time. It's like, if you want to go to 9, well, then everybody's going to be way older. So we need new people or move it forward. Or do Revelations 3 or something. Or fuck it, remake Resident Evil 1 again. I would like the future to not be retread ground, regardless of whether or not I like 5 and 6.
Well, it's not like the newest title in the franchise was like 10 years ago. Village came out just a couple of years ago, a few years ago. Yeah. So it hasn't been that long. And
so if they follow the pattern, the next one will be 9.
It could be. It's hard to judge it at this point because the main character of 7 and 8 died at the end of 8. Spoilers. And so where they go from there, I don't know. Yeah, you suggested that maybe they go revisit some of the older characters, but they are old as shit at this point. They're like 50 and, I mean, I know it's different in Japanese years. It's like dog years. 50 and 60 are still bad. Hey, I mean, there's a guy protagonist in his 50s that was starred in one of my favorite games this year, so anything's possible. But I don't know if they'll take a whole lot of time off between the next remake. They seem to have realized it makes a lot of money.
So. Yeah, they're printing money. It's easy, simple money. Now, I imagine they put a lot of resources, because this is the other thing. Like, I have another Capcom game we'll talk about here in a little bit, but Capcom has figured it out the last few years. They were in a downturn, Street Fighter V, and then the not great reception of Resident Evil 6 and all that shit. And then they figured it out. They got back on track. They're making a shit ton of money with not just those 2 franchises, but Monster Hunter is huge, especially in Japan. Their new engine makes every character a fucking supermodel, man or woman. So they know how to make money. They know how to be successful. They're probably the most successful studio going right now of anyone in the world.
That's because they're giving fans what they want. They're giving more of these franchises that people love and that they grew up with, and they're improving them. They're making them, whether or not all the improvements receive universal positive reception or not, they're making changes to them, but it's still, it's still familiar ground. And they got another one. I know if you mentioned Dragon's Dogma is coming out here in a couple months too.
Oh, yes.
And I think some other studios are taking notice and they're following suit. I think Sega just announced a month or so ago that they're releasing a whole bunch of new games for some old IPs as well. So yeah, it's definitely a formula that I think Capcom's going to try to ride out for as long as they can.
As long as the games are great, keep doing it. The second they start to turn sour.
Yes, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that line of stagnation comes in, because we see it so many times, not just in video games, but in other media platforms as well, there is such a thing as too much of a good thing.
Don't want to oversaturate your own. Don't compete with yourself.
Pretty much, exactly. Yeah.
Allow me to talk, if I may, about another zombie game. I think this is in your high tier. It's in my high mid tier. Dead Island 2.
Mm-hmm.
So this game was forever fucking delayed. I had a trailer from a long ass time ago that is basically not what's in the game, just like the trailer for the first Dead Island. And it doesn't even take place on an island. It takes place in southern Los Angeles. But you and I played. I don't know if we didn't beat it. We got pretty darn far into it, huge chunk of it. But yeah, the formula that Dead Island basically created on the 360 all those years ago that other games like Dying Light did a little bit better, still works. It's not, fighting hordes like the Left 4 Dead or Left 4 Dead clones. It's just like, here, pick up this bat and hit that guy in the head with it. All right, his head went off. Oh, you broke your bat. Pick up a new one. All right, here you go. For, 10 hours.
No, it's simple zombie smashing, and I love it. It's not, you're not mowing down hundreds of them, but you are bashing dozens of them. And I loved the variety of weapons that you could use to take them out, and how you're able to customize them and craft new ones and give them all sorts of quirky new perks, like, coat them in, kerosene and fire or something, barbed wire, good, fun stuff like that. And there are even firearms too, but, and they also, they really, I think they took a kind of a page from Dying Light, and they really improved the parkour in the game as well. So it made getting around the city seem very fluid and seamless, and it's just plain fun.
Yeah. They may have pushed a step too far on the humor, because the first Dead Island wasn't... I've played the first Dead Island like 7 times. I really like the first Dead Island. It's jank as fuck. It's busted and ugly, but I really like it. Riptide is not good, because it's a lot of protect the bullshit missions where you have to stand in an area and protect the central thing, which is not a fun thing to do. But both of those games are very serious games. Dead Island 2 does not take itself seriously at all, and I think in some places goes a bit too far in the whole humor aspect. Like, you're supposed to laugh at these annoying people instead of just finding them really annoying.
Yeah, humor was definitely hit or miss with me personally, and yeah, they had a lot of stereotypes that you probably would see in LA, and had a kind of a lot of current modern humor. Like, I think the most annoying mission that I remember playing was a side quest.
The influencer on the roof.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. Because it was one of those stand in one area and just fight off these hordes of zombies. But the influencer would demand you kill the zombies in different ways every wave that would come at you. And it just became annoying and tedious and took way too long to do.
And is a problem, when we talked about other things on like Resident Evil and Dead Space, is a problem of modernity. Is that when you put current day thing into a video game, you automatically put that game on a timer. You've dated it. So in 10 years, I can still play the first Dead Island because they remastered it, right? Again, jank as fuck. Still playable. In 5 years, let's say, when I boot up Dead Island 2 again for nostalgia's sake, and I get to that part, are there still going to be TikTok influencers? Is that still going to exist? I freaking hope not.
For all our sakes, I hope there isn't, but... fortunately, things aren't going the way we always would like, but yeah, no, there's a lot of like I said, current humor in it, and that stuff can get dated pretty quickly, and it got dated for me just playing this game, but I was able to overlook that for the most part.
That's the small negative.
And the story, I'm trying to remember, it's basically your character's infected and wants to find a cure, obviously. He follows a couple of leads that go nowhere, and then he finds a group of people and holes up in a house with them. But then there's this bigger conspiracy of infected celebrities that try to kill you too.
And then the idea that actually you don't need to be cured. You're got superpowers kind of now, but not really.
And it was very hard to take them seriously as antagonists, to be perfectly honest. And then there was this whole scientist guy that came up with the cure, and he was having daddy-daughter issues, and that was really not interesting whatsoever. And that's kind of how the game ended, just with their final talk or whatnot. But just playing the game, like I said, it was it was a lot of fun. It was surprising how much fun I had with the game. And it reminded me a little of when I played the first Dying Light. I was surprised on how much I really liked that game too, and how satisfying it is just to bash zombie skulls in up close and personal. It never gets old, and this is, I'm sorry to mention, this is one of the most graphic games I think I've played.
They went all out on the gore effects for the zombie killing. Yes,
it is crazy how detailed a lot of the innards and just their brains and the blood and
hanging off of half limbs,
and just all the stages of either dismemberment or damage. You could tell in a zombie, like, you would take a bat, you'd see a zombie, take a bat to their face, and then their eyes would start be popping out, and parts of their jaw would be broken off, and it was it was extremely gory, and it was really cool, to be honest. I loved it.
Meanwhile, Mortal Kombat charges you $10 to see that.
Yeah, to put a turkey on a guy's head.
Another Capcom title. Fighting Game of the Year. In fact, Street Fighter 6. This is... I don't even want to compare it to MK1. It's not fair to either game to do so. I'm going to compare it to the previous game, Street Fighter 5. So much better than Street Fighter 5 in every conceivable way. It actually has a narrative. It has better character models. It has a better way to play. It got rid of the stupid, annoying V-trigger, V-shift. It's more accessible, not in like the normal ways, but also in those ways. But in terms of giving you 3 different ways to actually control the game. You had your classic controls with your, quarter circle inputs and your chargebacks, but also had what they call the modern controls with simplified combos into 1 or 2 button presses, and a dynamic mode that you can only use in versus. That we just press 1 button and lots of crazy shit would happen. And it had a ton of crazy fun modes that are randomizers. Added into what they call Battle Hub, which is just the casual area where you can make a little avatar person and go and fight other rando avatar people. Or, obviously play as the World Warriors themselves. And it's a great cast, mostly picked from Street Fighter 2, but that's the most popular one, so why not? My major negative in it is that it does kind of focus a little too much on your avatar, create a fighter. There's a story. The story mode proper is called World Tour, and you take your creative fighter around the Street Fighter world, learning from the various World Warriors, and going on dumb little quests like punch this refrigerator, or pick up these tin cans with your fists. Just dumb little shit like that. And that's fine for like someone who's never played a Street Fighter game, which is but I've played them since the SNES. So I'm familiar with how Street Fighter works, so I didn't need a new tutorial on how Street Fighter works. But that's my biggest complaint about it. Otherwise, it's a great, terrific fighting game. Best I've played in a long time.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun with it too. And to touch on the controls too, I did like the option for the modernized controls, but I also appreciated that if you wanted to master the game, then you had to master the classic controls too. So it's not like...
Yeah, there are some moves limited to you if you use the modern. You can't do some of them.
Yeah, exactly. The World Tour, I didn't hate. It felt very much like a mode that they would put in like an old sports game, like a World Tour or something like that, and especially with the creative character side of things. And I don't know. I see. On one hand, I thought it made sense to, if you wanted to learn a character's move, you had to track them down and talk to them and fight them and whatnot and master their moves. I just think leveling up just took too long in that game. It took really, really a long time to master levels and stuff.
There didn't really need to be a level up system looking back on it. Like, it's not a necessity because they limit your moveset anyways. And leveling up only allows you to basically unlock more moves. It's like, a tiny bit of health, or you can wear this new kind of hat and it'll give you this bonus sort of shit.
And a big controversy surrounding the game at the time of launch was in order to get the main roster, their alternate costumes, you had to either pay real money to get them, or you had to play for, I think it is estimated anywhere like from 12 to 15 hours just with one character's style.
Yeah, you had to you go to every one of let's call them the World Warriors, the characters that you actually play as, right? You meet them all during that World Tour mode, but in order to lock their alternate outfits, you have to get their affection level, which is whatever, to level 100. It takes a long ass time to do that with one person. There's it was an 18 launch roster, if I remember correctly. So it's gonna take fucking forever if you want to legitimately earn every alternate costume. And so we come to the biggest problem with Street Fighter 6 has become a bigger problem as we've gotten 6 months away from the game, is Nickel and Diamond. Like I said earlier, Capcom knows how to make money, and they're like, okay, so this is a fighting game, so we'll just Nickel and Diamond the fuck out of everything. Not just alternate costumes for the World Warriors, but also they've really put a lot of pay real money to buy clothes for your creative fighter, which I think is shitty.
Yeah, there's been discourse between the Street Fighter and the Mortal Kombat communities on which one is shittier and has the worst business practices in their game. And I don't know if I can pick one because they're both bad just for their own unique ways. But they ultimately are just trying to squeeze as much money out of you as they can.
The Mortal Kombat one is bad because they took something away to charge you money for it. The Street Fighter one is bad because they're asking you to pay money for something you don't want.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. And the fact that a lot of these classic costumes that are some of people's favorites, because not everybody likes the new looks of even their old favorite characters. The fact that you either had to pay, I don't know, it was probably like $3 or $4 or $5, something like that per costume, when you convert it to the currency, or it just devote dozens of hours just playing as one particular style, albeit a limited move set. Like you pointed out earlier, it's like I played as Chun-Li, my character played under her mentorship for I don't know, about 4 or 5 hours, and I don't think I got into the double digits in level, and I believe the max is 100. So it takes forever, and there's even at the launch there were very few costumes per character. I'm sure they'll start drip feeding them here as the progression cycle continues.
The real problem is that they're not bundled yet. Street Fighter V, it had 1,000 costumes by the end of it. But they bundled a lot of those, which like spend $20 for 4 costumes, fucking whatever, right? So far, there is not a way to buy all. There's not an option yet. You have to buy the stupid little in-game currency fighter coins with real money and spend those coins on individual costumes.
Yeah, by the time I got around to buying Street Fighter V, the Ultimate Edition, I believe was called like Champion Edition, something like that.
Yes.
It already had a lot of costumes already built in the game, and when I saw how many there were, I was like, okay, that's enough for me. There's a costume I like for every single character, so
yeah. I
mean, that's cool, but yeah, for a brand new fighting game in this day and age, it's there's just going to be a small roster, and there's going to be a limited number of costumes, which are probably the number one, fan requested things.
Well, we've seen both extreme ends of this. Perhaps Mortal Kombat 1 again being far off contention. I'm sorry to keep bringing it up, but we didn't even talk about the costume issue in that game. But suffice to say, it's very limiting. But then we see the extreme end, which is like, heaven help us, Dead or Alive, where they're like, well, what if we give you 1 billion costumes and you have to pay for all of them? So it could be better and it could be worse as far as Street Fighter 6 is concerned.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I would say it's probably closer to the Dead or Alive 6 formula, where it's not nearly as many costumes as Dead or Alive, but you can earn them by playing the game. It's just going to take you a long time.
And in Dead or Alive, they let you bundle.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, they've released them. They have so many costumes, and they're frequently releasing them. I haven't checked in Street Fighter 6 yet. I don't know if they've released a lot of new costumes yet or
Everyone
not, but
has three now. Everyone has three.
oh, okay, yeah. So, yeah, it. I had fun with it as well, but it was a rental for me, and I, like you said, like I think I'm just gonna wait for like an Ultimate Edition, like I did with 5, when
Yeah,
there's
there probably will be one. Yeah.
all the DLC characters and costumes and whatnot, and that may be what I do with Mortal Kombat 1, or maybe not in that case, but I do look forward to.
It's all about price points.
Yeah, I do look forward to trying it again sometime down the line.
So the two major points of the two games of contention here, shall we say, where one of us really likes it and the other one thinks it's not as good. I'll just go first because I think you'll have less to say than I will say about your game. Did that make any sense? Starfield. There's a lot of bullshit on the internet about Starfield, positive and negative. There's very few neutral takes on it. I don't have the neutral take for you. I have the more positive take. It's a really good game. I will hesitate to say it's better than Fallout 4 or Skyrim. But it's a completely different kind of game than even both of those. It has similar Bethesda formulas, sure, but the way in which all three of those games are played is different. So it's not completely fair to compare them to previous Bethesda games. It is fair to compare it to stuff like No Man's Sky, that does a similar idea of exploring space to go to planets to gather resources. But as far as I'm aware, No Man's Sky is kind of devoid of narrative and character. You talk to like aliens who don't understand your language. And as far as I know, again, I've not played No Man's Sky. I don't really give a shit. But, Starfield has the quests. It has the factions. It has, the Bethesda quote-unquote formula of you can go wherever you want and do basically whatever you want. It's just the time it takes you to get to those places maybe a little longer than in previous titles. Because they have far too many planets, I'll say that. It would be better if it were more focused. They just straight up had less planets. They were more concerned about having a lot of them and different biomes and creatures. The issue becomes, at some point, not enough players are going to see all those biomes. This game also has spoilers for the ending, but the main quest is not very good. An ending, New Game Plus, that takes you to an alternate universe of the universe you just left. Unfortunately, you can't take any of your shit with you other than your levels and skills. So you lose all your guns, you lose all your gear, you lose every little tchotchke you picked up throughout the game in New Game Plus. But what you carry forward is the knowledge of the previous timeline, shall we say, universe. And sometimes there are, with the main quest only, unfortunately, little changes in the universe. You meet your standard companion party and they're all different, or they're all dead, or they're all children, or, the gravity shit works differently. But that's the gimmick in terms of, like, the New Game Plus idea. But again, because this game takes a fuck ton of hours, I put in over 100 before I got to my ending. A lot of players aren't going to get to see all the best stuff this game has to offer, which indicates that it is, in fact, too big.
Yeah, you definitely put a lot more hours into it. I think I got like 10 hours into it, because like I said earlier in the show, I didn't get an Xbox until later in the year, and my PC is a potato, so wasn't able to run it. Like, the intro to the game, like and I know it's not going to judge, this is just judging what I played on it. The intro is not as memorable as other previous Bethesda titles. You're not waking up 100 years into the future to a dystopia, and you're not warding off a dragon attack or escaping a prison. Mm-hmm. You're just going into a mine and you pick up a rock, and that's pretty much it. But seems to be magical properties with set rock, and then there's pirates after you and whatnot. So yeah, it kind of picks up a little bit after that. I haven't traveled a lot on the spaceship, but so far it just seems like clicking one menu option from another menu option and not a whole lot of space flight. I'm hoping that changes further into my experience. And I really wish there was a kind of a performance mode on this game, because it's at least my playthrough has been, it's I mean, it's not. It's not like erratic or anything with the jumping up and down with the stability or anything like that, but it's, I don't know. I think they could have managed to make it a little bit smoother.
Well, this is again the Bethesda thing, right? Like this is what they become famous for, the glitch jokes. But it's really because they have so much stuff, being processed. It's like the game is also over 100 fucking gigabytes, and I understand. I think it might be almost 150 at this point with updates. Because they just got a lot of shit in it. The major cities you go to, on like Aquila and Neon, have just a fuck ton of NPCs and stores on every front, and out in the wild there's a ton of creatures and flora and fauna, and some of the dead areas are just dead. There's a planet of nothing. Here's a nice planet. Do you want to harvest some carbon? No? Okay, well there's nothing here for you. Goodbye. So from that perspective, you can see where people say the game feels empty or hollow or boring, and I understand that part. But I think you get out of the game what you look for. If you want to go pirate raiding, you kind of can eventually. You want to take up your guns and shoot every alien creature you see, you can. You want to join the Corporation Guild and basically the Thieves Guild and steal from other corporations and get a mind-altering drug that when you talk to people during a little conversation, you can influence them using your basically psychic wave. You can, later on in the main quest, you actually do get a sort of shouts like Skyrim. You get powers that, set shit on fire or do a big push, a Fusrada, or alter gravity. But again, because it's so open-ended and so massive, not every player is going to see everything this game has to offer, which I think is a huge detriment to the game. It's like, making a smaller game probably would have gotten more people to play it and more people to like it, rather than having something so large. It's going to take years to see everything in this.
Yeah, I talked to my brother about it because he's played quite a bit as well, and I know he's not a host, but from what he told me, and it's just his opinion, he seems to he enjoys this as well. But the way he put it, he made it like the vast emptiness that you referring to earlier. Bethesda has in previous games, it's not even unique to Starfield, but they like to make liberal use of like AI and procedural generation of different landscapes and whatnot. And my brother, he's in the software engineering business, so he knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. He thinks they kind of over relied on it a little too much on certain planets, and that it was almost he was kind of getting to what your point is, Loki. It's kind of a little too big, and that sometimes it kind of hindered a lot of the designs on like even the more populated centers of the game, like some of the cities. And
yeah, what I called Cyberpunk Planet called Neon. I can't remember the system it's in, but I spent 15 hours there. All I did was quest on that one planet, and I never left. And then I went to Aquila City, and I did a bunch of quests on that one planet and never left. So it's possible for them to do what they've done in previous things, to just densely populate a small area. But then they give you 50 planets of, here's a tree.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if this was definitely not on purpose, but this is just the way the internet had just sort of, how it just things pop up sporadically or organically or however. But this game, Starfield, ended up being a great advertisement for Cyberpunk 2077 because people started comparing the two of those games, and it's like we'd forgotten that years before everyone was shitting on that game. And it's like, yeah. Oh, hey, look, hey, what's this game? Oh, yeah, it was Cyberpunk. It was actually pretty damn good. So I wonder if something like that will happen with Starfield in the future, if there will just be some other big title from whatever company will come out and people will say, well, Starfield did that much better. You should go play that.
I brought up No Man's Sky earlier. Do you remember No Man's Sky at launch? Everybody fucking hated it. That game has had the redemption arc of all games. Even Cyberpunk's redemption arc hasn't come close to No Man's Sky's redemption. Again, I think that game looks boring as fuck to play, but lots of people love it, and they've had 1 billion updates. That
studio spent so much time working on that game. They are just now moving on from it. Like I read that like a month or two ago. It's just like I can't remember the name of the studio, but
Hello Games.
Hello Games. Yeah. There's like, oh yeah, they're looking over to the next project. It's like, geez, how long have they been working on No Man's Sky? I think they almost went a little overboard with it, but I definitely want to. I'm definitely gonna play a lot more Starfield because I am intrigued by it, and it seems like there is a lot to offer there in that game.
I liked it a lot, but it fell short of my game of the year. Partially because of that main quest. It's like the powers you get are cool, and some of your companions are kind of cool. But what you're doing is basically what you did at the beginning of the game. Unfortunately, you mine rocks. It's like, hey, there's a rock. There's a special rock in this cave. Go down there and get it. What would I have to do? I'll fight a billion space spiders or a bunch of space pirates who want to kill you. It's like, all right, then you get the rock.
Yeah, and in fairness, that's never been Bethesda Game Studios' forte. Real
Yeah.
strong main quest. I thought Oblivion's was okay, was pretty good, but they're most suited for just putting putting items in certain locations and then just like creating like almost a visual puzzle and then telling the player, okay, figure out what happened here. Like, you know, what do you think happened? And that's that's one of the most fun things to do in those games is just go in and see like a teddy bear in a toilet and like, what the hell? How'd that get there?
The famous Fallout 3 skeleton that has a fan on his junk.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
The best quest in Starfield is the side quest where you're working for the corporate guild. I can't remember the name right now off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I've likened it to the Thieves Guild. It's not, none of the ones are one for one what you have in Skyrim or anything. But there's like 4 or 5 different ways to end that quest line, and spoilers, it culminates in you sneaking back into the place you already work at after hours.
Oh, to uncover secrets or
Yep,
some
to be a corporate spy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're so much of a corporate spy, you spy on your own bosses without them knowing, which is just it's layers upon layers. Anyways, Starfield is a great game. I don't care what any New Zealander says. It's great.
He's dead anyway, so you don't have to worry anymore.
Now, the other game of contention is one of your faves.
Yeah. It's a title from one of my, if not my favorite video game franchise, Final Fantasy 16. And I was really curious about this game leading up to it because there was a lot of talk on the guy heading up the Naoki Yoshida, who is best known for his work on as a producer of Final Fantasy 14. He's basically the head honcho there.
The MMO one.
Yes, yeah, the MMO. And a lot of the members that worked on 14 with him came over and started working on 16. And it was one of those, I don't know, one of those weird limbo situations with me because I really love what he did I love the MMO, but I thought, how is that going to work for a single player experience? And I think they did a good job for the most part, but there's definitely a lot of influences from said MMO and a lot of influences from some other popular fantasy franchises, mainly the more adult oriented ones, such as The Witcher or I know it's not a game, but Game of Thrones, the TV show. It's 16 is it's a lot more serious and a lot more, I guess, mature. I'd say I always hesitate to use words darker and edgier because that's always two buzzwords, but it's not. It's definitely, it took a lot of influences from those dark fantasy IPs, and that's most reflected in the story and the characters because it's a very depressing world that you live in. There are constant wars, there's slavery, there's persecution, there's a supernatural blight that is literally eating the landscape away.
Children dying.
Kids dying, people petrifying. It's not good. It is very grim in this universe. And but I think I love a lot of the characters. I do. And I especially like some of the side characters like Sid and Hugo, who's one of the antagonists. and I freaking love the design of the icons. They are amazing. They're some of the best in the whole Final Fantasy.
Yeah, Final Fantasy keeps reusing these same gods, let's just say, these archetypes, but they keep the same names but change their designs all the time. Like Ifrit in FF7 remake is not the Ifrit in FF16, but it's supposed to be, kind of, sort of. Same for all the Shiva and Oda and all those guys. Like, I think those were certainly in the marketing the stars of the show, all the summons. And for the first time ever, you get to basically control them in large parts of the game. You have huge boss fights as, I can't remember what the big rock guy is called. It's not Odin, some other fucker.
Titan.
You get to play Titan, play briefly as him, kind of, and then fight a guy as him or something like that. Play as Phoenix, that sort of shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of characteristics and features that carry over from each Final Fantasy title, but like Ifrit being fire based and Ramuh's lightning and so on and so forth. But I think they hit it out of the park with most of the designs in this game, and they were the center of the game. They were the icons who were controlled. They are basically dormant inside these human hosts called the Dominants. And you, Clive, are one of the icons, and you basically, throughout the story, you'll meet several Dominants, and most of them you're going to fight. And you can also absorb their powers, but it's only kind of a fraction of their power. You only get some of their abilities.
Yeah, like a big punch.
Yeah, Titan gets a big rock hand, and Ramuh, you get a staff and you can summon some lightning, which, to be honest, I was kind of disappointed by that. I wish you could actually summon said icons, but I guess it kind of made sense since they're still... Clive wasn't completely sucking the powers out of them, and they're still tied to their human hosts. So it's not like you can, call up Dion whenever you want and just say, hey, do Hyper Beam. Or Mega Flare.
You can't be like become the ultimate, Ultimecha, but become the ultimate god being and have all the power, sort of bullshit, like a modern Marvel thing, modern MCU thing. The reason for that limitation, I think, is because of the way the game plays now. So unlike every Final Fantasy that I have played, I've not played every one of them. This is a single player game, and by that I mean it's just you. You're only playing as Clive, a brief part as his brother. But you're only playing as the main guy. You don't have a party you control, per se. Sometimes you're accompanied by your dog, sometimes your girlfriend. That's kind of it.
No, the companions are completely controlled by AI. You can only influence the dog's actions, and those are very limited in and of themselves. But everyone else are being controlled by the AI, and you got no say in the matter, and that's probably my biggest gripe with the game, because I'm still old school. Like you and I talked, we're still big fans of the turn-based RPG formula.
Yes.
And I kind of wish this game had implemented that, because while it's a fine action game, don't get me wrong, it's just not nearly as good as the pure action games that I've played in the past. And it's... I don't know. It feels like everyone's detached from Clive. It feels like it's just Clive, and then everybody's following, some people follow him around sometimes. It didn't feel like I had a party. Because I didn't.
You never had a party. It's just you.
Yeah, it was just you and some people, some friends following. So they almost felt sort of detached from everything that was happening, and it also doesn't help the fact that they talk very little, your companions do, when you're interacting with other NPCs throughout the world. They're not like other companions in a lot of modern day RPGs that will throw in their 2 cents, or you can have them answer a question, or ask them hey, what do you know about this place or this person or so and so. Now that's not to say that these other characters don't have their moments, because some of them are actually pretty poignant and instrumental to the story, and they go through pretty satisfying arcs. I liked Jill's. I honestly, I loved Dion's story. I thought he was great. he reminded me a lot of I'm blank on his name, but he's basically, his father is a king and he's possessed and whatnot, and he's kind of torn between, following his father's orders and go to the kingdom, or just, doing the right thing. And it was really cool to see, how his story unfolded. And and there's a lot of great moments like that and great scenes, but the game is fundamentally missing a lot of the inherent sort of levity that is really, really a big part of the Final Fantasy as a whole. There's always, it seems like, maybe not so much the first one because it's very, very basic story, but there's a certain bit of campiness to these games, not to the old Resident Evil games kind of way, but there's a lightheartedness.
There's no lighthearted characters, I will say. Some people will try to put out his uncle or fucking whatever makes like one joke. But, even like a more serious bit, controversy here. FF13. It's like, what was the fucking point of Vanille? To be comedy, to be lighthearted. Yeah, she had deeper whatever, but that was her gag for a while, right? And Zaz would do silly moments, and that's a fairly serious game. And plenty of other shit. This is just one example. But my biggest problem with the game is, like, everything was dour. Everything was shit. Everything sucks forever. Everyone's an asshole. Everyone's a dick. So I didn't like any of them. So yeah, okay, Jill got a cool moment. Who gives a fuck? Okay, the bad guys got so much damn screen time in this that it felt like a Game of Thrones. It felt like Yoshida or whoever said, let's just do Game of Thrones. And I'm not a huge fan of that kind of stuff. I've seen it similar in The Witcher, where it's like, this world sucks and everyone sucks in it.
I think that's an oversimplification of a lot.
Yeah, I'm doing that on purpose, but yes.
I mean, I know you're doing
it
for the podcast's sake, but
no, that is how I perceived it.
And there is some truth to that. There definitely is. But these characters, they're not the same. They're not the same at the end as they are at the beginning. So I do like what they go through, and I think it makes sense for a lot of these characters and how it shapes them and how they are, because like I said earlier, it is a very, very shitty world that they live in, and there's not a lot of cause for hope. But that's been the case for a lot of other Final Fantasy universes. I mean, most of them, there's some end of the world plot that you try to have to stop the bad guy and save the world or whatnot. But yeah, it felt very catered towards like a Western HBO kind of audience, with a lot of the cutscenes. Because you are right, the bad guys get a lot of screen time, and I liked most of them. I thought they were very good bad guys. The one I was disappointed in the most was probably Odin. He just, like, once they learned that he's basically just like simping for Ultima, his estimation just dropped precipitously in my eyes. Because so far, he was badass. He had a badass. Odin was awesome. He was so great looking, and he was such a presence. But then it's just like, oh, free will is stupid. I'm just gonna get controlled by Ultima, and then just
have hallucinations and shit.
Yeah, like imagine my naked mother is lying in my bed.
That's what I wanted to get to. It's like this is the first M-rated Final Fantasy game, not counting Type 0, but Type 0 had violence. This one has violence and swearing. People say shit and they say fuck. Ooh. There's some side boob. There's a lot of butt cheek. It's like, this wasn't necessary. This is needless. This is limiting your audience to appear mature. This is the mature paintbrush that you use, which is why I don't like a lot of the mature things. The TV shows, the constant comparisons to Game of Thrones. I'm sorry, but it's got that aesthetic.
I like mature things. They're just not something. Typically, they're not something I'm going to go back and revisit. Once I've played Last of Us once, I'm never going to play it again. I have no desire to play it again. It's not just for the story or the characters, the themes, or the shitty gameplay. I mean, it's all of that stuff, but it's kind of.
No, I understand.
It's kind of what I feel about Final Fantasy 16, and plus, it's very long too. It's just
yes.
It's not just kind of it's not like bite sized or a small scale like Last of Us is. It's very it is a RPG, Japanese RPG length, but it's kind of coated in a paint of like a Western dark fantasy sort of style, and I think it was a good game. I liked it. I had enjoyed playing it. I just don't think it was a very good Final Fantasy game when it was all said and done. And personally, I think they need to go. They need to go back to formula, as Green Goblin put it. They need to go back to what was made the franchise what it is.
And to be honest, they are doing that by continuously updating 7, like 7 and Crisis Core and maybe Dirge of Cerberus remakes. It's like they're milking. People say they want to milk 7 for all it's worth, but 7's the most popular one. It makes the most money, so of course they're going to keep coming back to that well. And in a few months here, you and I are both looking to the second part of the remake Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy, such as it is,
Rebirth, yeah.
which has a ton of more lighthearted content just from the trailers, just from the original game had. The entire fucking Golden Saucer is almost lighthearted content. So they are sticking to the formula. They're just not making new of the formula. Because 15 was also a departure.
Yes, if 16 had the combat system of 7 remake, I would have been happy with that, because at least then you could control Jill, you can control Joshua. I thought Dion would have been a perfect character to be a party member, but since it's not a party game, he didn't join you or anything. I do wonder if they're going to take the right lessons from the success of what I'm perceiving is going to be the success of the remake series. In that,
as opposed to the Capcom route of make more of them.
No, I was just thinking, like, if it's going to be a one and done, I'm not saying I'm wanting more remakes than Final Fantasy games. I'm just saying, like, I think that blending of the new and the old style combat systems really worked. Works. I think it's what they should be focusing on in the future. But I wonder if they just say, okay, people just love Final Fantasy VII. It wasn't just the combat, which is true. Mm-hmm. It's why they're remaking them, I should say. And I kind of wish they would just go back to more RPG roots and just kind of say, okay, we tried something different with 16, but ultimately that's whether it's the tone or the play style. We just need to kind of go back to our roots in the future. Installments.
The Square Enix is the gambler. They're like all in on NFTs and AI. So whether that come back to bite them in the ass to offset the money they'll make from the remakes, we shall see.
Yes, because I've been trying to look up numbers for 16. They made an initial announcement after the first 2 weeks that it sold, I want to say, like 10 million, 15 million units or something like that.
That sounds about right.
But after that, there was some news coming out about a shareholders meeting that they weren't satisfied with it. So ultimately, I don't think it made as much money or moved as many units as they had wanted. And some of that might have been because it's a PS5 exclusive. It's not even on platforms, the contemporary platforms like the Series S, X, or PC. So that might have tampered down the sales a little bit, but
or PS4, by the way.
Yeah, it's not even on PS4 either. It's strictly PS5. And I just think in the future Final Fantasy games, you can, if we've seen them before in the past, you can handle mature adult themes or conversations in moments, but you need some time to let it breathe. You need to. It's like when you're watching an action movie, and every once in a while they'll just cut away from it because you kind of need a break. You kind of just need to reset for a moment, and some stories need that too. You can't just be like, okay, everybody's dying, everybody's petrifying. We got to, it's just like constant constant depression everywhere you go.
But like we talked earlier about Dead Island, it's like that was just constant comedy. There was nary a serious moment in that. And even on the moments you're supposed to take serious, your character that you picked would voice some, offhanded comment. So it's possible to go too far on both ways on this. You need a nice, healthy middle ground, we all love.
Yeah, you need just a little more tonal balance is just kind of what I ask in the future. So, but I mean, overall, like I said, I enjoyed it for what it was. I think it'll be a one-off thing. I don't know if I'll ever go back and revisit it, to be frank.
No contention for this next one. We had a whole show about Hogwarts Legacy. Go listen to that for more in depth. But that's definitely one of the best games of the year. I don't know if you want to say your best of the year, but it's certainly up there for me. I'm not the world's biggest Harry Potter fan. I like the movies. I read the books. They're okay. I like the movies better because they're shorter. But but I had fun playing it. It's like you pick your silly little house and you go and you shoot a billion spiders or kill a million goblins. That's the other thing. You fucking murder everyone in that game. You make, if you're into potions, you can make a bunch of potions. You use plants and shit. You go to class. Luckily, thankfully, my biggest contention with the books, in the video game, there's very little going to class, which I appreciate. It's like, I don't want to spend all fucking day in theory class. I want to go out and do shit. And the teachers in 1880s Hogwarts are totally fine without you exploring the entire countryside and killing as many goblins as you see. Go for it, 15-year-old.
Yeah, they are very hands-off faculty at that school. It's very refreshing. I know when some people before this game came out, a lot of people were hoping that it was going to be like a Hogwarts school sim, which would be interesting, but that's not exactly what I wanted for my first experience as a game with a fully fleshed out Hogwarts, because there have been Harry Potter games, licensed games and whatnot in the past, that some were enjoyable, but mostly a lot of are just jank or just
they were all based on the movies.
Yeah, and a lot of them have just straight up meme material throughout them. But this one, I loved what they did with Hogwarts. I like you said, we talked about it more in the depth of the show, but that was my main thing coming from this game. Is I spent hours the first time when I was walking through the castle just exploring everything, and I loved all the little details and seeing like things from the book, recognized from the books and the movies, and just how it all fit together and how it flowed together. And some things just were kind of a little different in my mind, but the layout really made sense, and it was nice to sort of have bearings on everything, on all the familiar landmarks of the castle itself. And the game itself it's kind of like a third person, like, kind of a Ubisoft formula open world sort of thing, and it's tried and true.
There are a few too many collectibles, sure, like get all the pages and shit.
Yeah, but I think that it's kind of tried and true. They do a good job. Combat feels fun. It's nice using all the spells and mixing them up and whatnot, and just having every dark wizard just get their ass kicked by a 15-year-old is pretty amusing.
Oh yeah, the 15-year-old, by the way, who learns all the curses like I did. I joined Snake House and was like, fuck yeah, give me all those curses. I'm gonna go killing. And I went a-killing.
I was Gryffindor, and I learned all the forbidden spells too, the unforgivable curses. So, I mean, how could you not? It's I think it was the first game you could actually do that. Just Crucio people. It was a blast. So
wonderful. I loved it.
It was magical. Not to put it on the nose too much, but
we've already spoken about the various controversies around it. I believe, I have to double check, but that's a bit too much research for me. I believe it was actually the number one selling game of the year.
I've read reports as that as well, and I haven't confirmed it compared it with other titles, but I believe it. I could see that being the case. Yeah.
Now the reasons for that, it must be because it's a good game, and there can't be any other social reasons whatsoever.
Yeah, it was not because of any reverse boycotts, which is just buying the product,
which is the normal thing to do that people want. Do you want to talk about Octopath real quick?
Yeah. Another game I played really early in this year, Octopath Traveler 2. The first game came out just for the Switch, and then later on came out for the Xbox. But this one came out for, I think, every platform simultaneously. And this is, when you think of the word sequel, you want it to improve on everything the previous title did, and that's not always the case, just in no matter what it is, video games, movies, whatnot. But this Octopath Traveler 2 is an improvement in every single appreciable, discernible way. It is like the graphics, the music, the characters, the storylines, the quest, everything, the combat, just everything I can think of off the top of my head, I liked better in this game and in the first game. And I really liked the first game. It was a nice callback to those old 16-bit RPGs that used to came back, and it's the style, the way they categorize it is 2.5D. It's 2D characters on a 3D plane, and it's not going to win any awards for graphics, but I think that a lot of the environments are really, really nice looking, and there's a lot of work into them too. And I loved going to all the areas and seeing all the distinct cultures and people that were in each part of the world, and like learning how your character, how your your main party, like how they interacted with those people there. And one of my biggest gripes of the first game was also addressed in this game, in that Octopath Traveler is kind of a unique RPG in that your party they're not really a party per se. They're kind of like people traveling in the exact same place and time, but they don't have like a common goal. They have their own separate stories that you can play and progress in. And in the first game, there's almost, I want to say there's like almost zero interaction with your party members until like the very end. There's a few lines of throwaway dialogue. This game, it still has the separate stories per character, and most of them are great. Some of them are fantastic. But there's also some other side quests with multiple characters, talking, interacting with each other, and just going on adventures together. And then they all the separate storylines each have their own thread that connects, and then there's like this greater conspiracy and greater enemy that's connected with all of the different ones. And then that's when the whole party gets together and they're like, talking to each other. It's so weird because it's like such a common thing in a lot of other games with big parties. Like they talk all the time, of course. Why wouldn't they? Mm-hmm. But it's not something that's, really the focus of these Octopath Traveler games. And to see that at the end of 2 and just all come together before the climax, it was really satisfying. And it was one of my favorite games of the year. It was top 3. Of the year. I had a blast playing it. It was fantastic.
I played a tiny bit of the first one because it was on Game Pass. I was doing a quest. And I do recall the selling point being the different origin stories for each of your 8 party members or so. But my time with this is very limited. So.
I would still recommend the first one, but you can, if you want to jump ahead and play the second one, there's no connection between the two.
Yeah, I was going to ask. That was my follow-up. Is like, is it a direct sequel?
No, absolutely not. It's separate worlds, separate characters, separate every. The only thing tying it to, it's just the combat system that's similarities. Other than that, there's absolutely no connection.
All right, might try that then.
I recommend it. It's fun.
Is that it? Like, time for Game of the Year?
I think so, yeah.
So, I'll say the name and then I'll say my favorite bit from it. It is, in fact, like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name. It is a semi-sequel. It is a sequel to Yakuza 6. And it's sort of prequel to Yakuza 7, Like a Dragon, where they changed the name of the franchise officially from Yakuza to Like a Dragon, which is what it's called in Japanese, Ryogakutoku.
It's getting very confusing, but yeah.
A little bit, yes. The best part of this game is the ending. And it's nothing you play. It is a nearly 60-year-old man bawling his eyes out on a little iPad, seeing his adoptive children growing up that he'll never be able to talk to again. I don't want to. I'm going to get emotional thinking about it. Seriously, I cried when this happened in game because it requires so much backtracking we don't have time for in this episode. We talked in previous shows about how much we love the Yakuza franchise and the star for almost all of those games, Kiryu Kazuma. And it's been his franchise, and it still kind of is his franchise all throughout all these years and all these games going back to the PS2. And he's literally looking at his own legacy that he has to leave behind. It's not even just like a meta commentary, but in the game, he's looking at his family, his adopted family that he has to let go of. Everything that he's fought for up until that point is to get to that point, to make sure that those kids are going to be okay without him. It's something he's been worried about since Yakuza 3, all those years ago. So that final moment really got to me emotionally in ways that like 99% of games don't fucking get to me. I legitimately, the last game I cried at was Red Dead 2, and before that, maybe the first Life is Strange. So that's how rare it is for me to give a fuck. I really cared about Kiryu and all the really tough shit he went through in his entire life, and all the betrayals and the loss and the death, and to come out on the other side of that like a stronger man. That's a fucking great game protagonist.
And absolutely, no doubt. It's I teared up as well at the end there, and it's just experiencing what that guy Kiryu had gone through just in his whole saga, Yakuza franchise. And because what it comes down to, and I've always kind of joked that Kiryu is like one of the worst Yakuza of all time, but it's because deep down he's a protector, and he searched for companionship in a family, and that's a big reason why he joined the Yakuza, and also to repay his father figure and whatnot. But you touched on like all the betrayals and all the people closest to him have died, and he's, no matter how hard he tries, it seems like he keeps losing people, and then he gives up everything, gives up his whole life and his identity to save these kids. And you had to see him get that reassurance that they're going to be okay. You did right by them. And I'm choking up just talking about it right now.
Well, it is also important to note, this game also has you wrestling nearly naked men in a big arena. You get literal rocket shoes. You get explosive cigarettes. You have a magical watch that has like fucking Spider-Man rope, and you whip people with it. An army of drones crashes into this thing.
It's all just the absurdity of the Yakuza franchise rolled into one, and it's just like nothing surprises you at this point with the games. It's like, yeah, a rocket shoes on, rocket dress shoes. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's totally right.
Literally, the last game had a hidden World War II battleship sitting there for 70 years that emerged at the climax of the thing. And then you fought an old Japanese comedian for control over a tiny baby.
God. I love the franchise so much, and
it's maybe like we love our Metal Gears, we love our Final Fantasies, all that other shit. The Yakuza series has to be the most consistently great series ever, over like Grand Theft Auto or fucking anything. Because the worst game in the franchise, in my opinion, Yakuza 3, still got a lot of good in it.
Oh, no doubt. That's probably what I rate that as well. 3 is definitely the bottom, but it's still a pretty darn good game. And the highs are really high, and I don't know, it just seems at some point it's like, man, we were talking about this earlier, people getting burned out but they know how to mix it up just enough and just add the right kind of crazy into their games. Where, like I said, it's just seamless. It's just, you don't question it anymore. It's like, yeah, this is definitely something that, a guy with a big giant rooster head shooting a rocket launcher. Yeah, of course that fits in the Yakuza universe.
The the biggest departure of the franchise as a whole has been the move to split it, like Assassin's Creed. They're gonna have a more turn-based RPG franchise starring a different protagonist, but they also are kind of spinning it off the traditional street brawling, just press a bunch of buttons fighting, in a different series with Judgment and Lost Judgment. I hope they'll continue that franchise because that's also great. Um, but even when we think it's like, okay, I know they brought back Kiryu for his own little shorter game. Man Race's Name is a very short game, and he'll be back in the next one coming up in a couple of weeks, Infinite Wealth. But the new protagonist is just as fucking good, and they did it in one game. They managed to put all that humor and all that heart into Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon. So I'm waiting for them to fuck up. Does that sound wrong? It's like, are they ever gonna mess this up? Because four, I don't know if four isn't even the peak anymore, but it's up there, right? Five was a disappointment, but still had a ton of great moments. Six was incredible. Seven was great. Two Judgment games are great on their own accord for narrative, and Man Who Race's Name is also great. It's like, can they keep this up? Because I know the head guy at Ryuga Gotoku left to go do his own stuff.
Yeah, I hope so. It's it'll be interesting to see. I think, yeah, five tried to almost do too much in it. Like, it had a racing mini game and a hunting mini game.
Well, you also had five and rhythm game. You had five playable protagonists in that as well.
Yes, it was almost just kind of an overload of content in that game, and it's not technically part of the Yakuza. It's one of those, it splits off. But I thought Lost Judgment was one of the weaker in it, but it still also had a lot of good things in it. It was also a lot of fun to play.
The main story of Lost Judgment is really, really good. It's not as good as the first game, but it's still really, really good. It just bogged down with the side content.
Yeah, it had the school side shit that just drug on, but yeah, it's I'm I'm curious to see if how long it can go, and they definitely seem to be pushing all their chips into the RPG future of it, which I'm all for, because like you said, Yakuza 7 was great. I can't wait to play these characters again. Like, I have to keep myself from spoiling things.
If we go back in time in our own brains, we played these games. I think 1 and 0 are different for you and me, but we played them in chronological order. Not necessarily release order. So when 7 was coming out, you and I both knew it's like, oh, Kiryu's not in this. He's not the main guy. What's it going to do? How's this going to work out? And it's worked out so well. I have no doubt about Infinite Wealth. I have zero. It's like, I trust Ryuga Gotoku. I trust this studio to do right. And based on all the preview I've seen, there's a couple of side missions I don't give a shit about, but they hit tone perfect. It's like, this is the perfect blend of heart and humor that was missing in all these other games. Every game I've told you before has either one of the two or neither of the two. These games are missing something. This 6-7 hour game, Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, has everything I want in video games. It's fun to play. It has characters I give a shit about. It has a story that makes sense. The motivations of all the characters makes fucking sense. That's what I want. And it on Game Pass cost me nothing, so I went and bought it on PlayStation because I feel like I should own this game.
Yeah, it was crazy because it felt like it was an epilogue to the main line of the series, the Yakuza games, but it was also like the next stepping off point. After that, it's like it's the next step of not just Kiryu's journey, but Ichiban's as well, and it's Kiryu passing the torch onto him. Both literally, kind of metaphorically speaking, but it definitely, yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that's another thing that makes the Yakuza series so great is that they seem to strike that tonal balance so well, because the main stories for all the Yakuza games are very serious. Like, there's like almost no levity whatsoever in those games. There's you get that stuff when you're out exploring the city and you're doing sub stories and you're playing media games and just saying, it's like it it seems like it doesn't work, but they make it work. Yeah, they're able to put the heart and the humor just seem to balance it out really well.
The term you hear a lot in video game journalism is cognitive dissonance, where Nico Bellic in GTA 4 is crying about his lot in life, but when you're playing the game, you're blowing up taxi cabs with a rocket launcher. I've never felt cognitive dissonance in a Yakuza game. I'm replaying 7, and within the first, 2 hours, a guy's hung himself. Oh, but he didn't actually hang himself. It was a murder. And it's like, oh, the babies were switched to birth and some, teen pregnancy. And it's like fucking serious hardcore drama. But also, there's a Yakuza boss who likes to dress up as a baby. And you can call him on your magical phone. And also you can call a lobster or a fucking crawfish. And a chicken will lay eggs for you. And also you play a real estate game. But deadly serious murder and betrayal and the fate of the president of Japan or whatever the fuck it's called, prime minister, is also in the balance.
Yeah, there's some heavy stakes in most every single game, and I won't say it's because there has been so many titles and there's so many characters, and they're all woven together in a pretty complicated web. I won't say that the series is 100% consistent or the stakes make sense at all every given time, but self-contained, I think they work really well. Like 3 story got kind of wacky with the secret brother that works for the CIA, and then
who's never shown up ever again. Yes.
Yeah, and then 5 story was also a little weird, where it was just kind of like, hey, the main bad guy was the nondescript dude next to you all along, and it's like, all right, there wasn't really much build up to that, and I don't know why we're fighting, but we're fighting, and the shirts are coming off, so I guess we're doing
this. The second best part of Main Race's name when everybody takes their shirts off.
Yes, and that's the only time they do that, because that's a staple in the Yakuza games, is that's how they know things are getting serious. They're about to throw the shirts off, and it wasn't just that they throwing the shirts off, it's who did it too. It was all the Tojo greats. It was Kiryu. Yeah. And Saejima and Majima and Daigo, and it was such a badass manly moment. It was amazing. And it was just like it was the old guard that was they were trying to shuffle the new guard into this new world.
Mm-hmm. Which again is one of those meta things. It's like we're bringing this franchise forward. It's like what we wish other series would do. It's like Yakuza's doing it. They are now like a dragon. They have officially shifted. Yeah, they're going to keep Kiryu around, but they have moved the franchise forward.
And I love that it was the old characters that made the change. It wasn't the new, hey, get out. It wasn't like Midnight Suns where it's like, hey, old Avengers, what have you done for me lately? Okay, get out of here. It's whatever we're called, the Misfits time. And
Runaways.
It's like they didn't make the old Tojo guys look like idiots. They've done that enough themselves. But it was just, it's like they gave them a respectful send-off, too, and I love that.
Anyways, everyone should play all of these Yakuza games in the order that they released. Yeah. And the Judgment games. They're all great.
Because most of them, I believe, are on Game Pass, and if not, they're usually pretty cheap, wherever you find them, PlayStation, Steam, whatnot. You can find them all for pretty reasonable, and they're worth it.
Absolutely. This is going to be a chunker of an episode, so I think that's going to be it. There's games we didn't talk about that came out this year. I'm sorry. You can tweet about them. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a separate show next time or something, because I think we do kind of owe it maybe to some of those other titles like FF16, because we didn't do a show about that.
Yeah, it's I'll have to go back and kind of brush up on all the plot lines and characters and whatnot, but I would eventually like to do one of that. And I'm also currently doing a Let's Play of Baldur's Gate 3, so I haven't forgotten that. That is
just haven't finished it.
Yeah, that is on my YouTube channel, Joe Stizzy. I'm not very far into it, but and it's going to take a while, but I'm getting through it.
Would you put that on your higher end just for evaluation's sake?
I played about 12, 13 hours, and I like what I played so far. I was kind of a fan of the Divinity Original Sin games, but I wasn't big into them. My brother loved them, and he was just gushing about this game because he played the beta, and PC release about a month or before PS5. So I was like, I'll pick it up. But I like how I like in conversations I can actually see my character and my companions and the person I'm talking to instead of the top down isometric. Because while I've enjoyed games like that, like Diablo and whatnot, it's much I like it. It's a better way to connect to a character and NPCs when I can actually see them up close. So that's a nice change, and they really, I mean, your origins kind of do matter in this game. Like everywhere, like I picked a drow, and everyone I talk to is like, "Hey, what's a drow doing above ground? Don't you eat babies?" It's like, "Hey, you drows, you worship a spider queen,
Casual
right?"
racism.
Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is, and I don't know, I'm kind of being developed by a Western studio. I'm kind of on the maybe I'm hypersensitive to sort of modernism kind of stuff, but so far I haven't run into anything.
Well, there's that goblin who wants to fuck a bear or whatever.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's one of those things like Starfield, like Cyberpunk, where just the really some of the bad stuff just kind of gets put under a microscope a little unfairly,
Forspoken.
perhaps. But yeah, so like I said, I'm getting through it and enjoyed what I played so far, and we'll see, because it's another big one. It's a lot of big games this year.
It's about to get even bigger, because FF7 Rebirth is going to take up all of our 100 hours. I know Tekken 8's coming up. That soon-to-be Dead in the Water Suicide Squad game's coming up. 24. We said 23 is going to be a big year, and there was some stinkers. 24 is going to be a big year.
It's going to be an interesting year, because the first half has been pretty well slated. A lot of big titles coming out. I'm not quite familiar with the middle and the last few quarters of the year. If there's anything, anything coming out around then, I'm sure there are. I just can't remember them off the top of my head. But yeah, some heavy hitters just to start the year off early. Looking forward to it.
I think that wraps up this chunk of an episode. Thank you so much for listening to this very long bit. If you skipped all the way to the end, what the fuck is wrong with you? I have been Loki Jarson. You can find me on Twitter, or X if you're a weirdo, at Loki Jarson.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter /X at @TheJoeStizzy.
Also, again, repeat your YouTube channel, please.
It is, if you just type in Joe Stizzy, you should be able to find it.
Because there are several Stizzies, I want to warn people. When I searched for you, I found some pot smoker.
Yeah, my username has a bunch of numbers after it, and I'm not sure why, so
That's everyone. That's everyone on YouTube, even me who doesn't have an account.
Okay, yeah, I figured it was some kind of identification number or whatnot, so, but it should, I believe it is, if you just type Joe Stizzy, you will eventually find me. I need to come up with a more, I need to come up with my own personal profile picture, so make it easier to distinguish.
Oh, do you want to stay in the Alphabet Alliance? That's another in-joke we won't explain. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.